An American Comedown. First manuscript, pre-edit. Written March 10th, 2026 to March 29th, 2026. First revision, April 25th, 2026. Final edit, May 10th, 2026 to July 3rd, 2026. For the Mother Road, U.S. Route 66, decommissioned in 1985, lest we forget its vital role for 1930s westward migration and post-World War II tourism. May it forever capture the hearts of generations to come, for culturally, it is a beacon of freedom. Thank you. Part 1, Chapter 1. The Editors. Mr. Jack Robert, thank you for submitting to The New Yorker. Whilst there is much to admire about your story, we are unable to publish it in our magazine. We wish you luck and would love to hear from you again. Sincerely, The Editors. Another one, I thought to myself, as I took a drag of my Marlboro Red, which I affectionately call Marbs, in my basement. My wife did not much like me smoking in the house, but this was the basement, my work area, which I affectionately named my studio. There was something soothing about finding the darkest, coldest, dampest, and light-ridden spot in the house that a man was forced to work. At least I could smoke here, on occasion. I was turning 30 this year, and I was going through a bout of what I call post-youth existentialism. I was a struggling writer with low-rolling gambling enthusiasm, which my wife affectionately calls an addiction. For context, I loved my job as a superintendent at a country club, but I recently lost that job due to the fact I couldn't stop shooting dice with the janitor. Hence why I submitted a half-edited short story to multiple literary outlets at the behest of my wife. At least she believed in me. If it wasn't for drinking, gambling, and my wife, I genuinely believe I wouldn't be here today. It was April in Detroit, and I was packing up my car to take a road trip with a longtime friend, Marcus. It was a pseudo-bachelor party trip along Route 66 from Detroit to Las Vegas and the 100th anniversary of the Mother Road. Additionally, this year would be the 250th anniversary of America. We could not feel more American. War breaking out in the Middle East, gas prices at an all-time high, and I just lost $4,000 this week in my 401k due to the stock market tanking. God bless this country. This road trip also doubled as one last chance at the American dream. I was hoping to scrape together any bit of inspiration from this trip in hopes to boost my dopamine and draft the next great American novel. It would triple as one final rush of euphoria before turning 30 forces the American Comedown upon me. Writing, poetry, and playing in a band did not look cute upon the face of a 30-year-old man. It looks quite sad, actually. I came to bed, my wife was reading, and my mind was racing, which happened often before bed, as I had a hard time turning off the rush of ideas and theories of how I would strike it big. It was always something with me. If I could just do this and make that happen, we will be set for life. It never turned out that way. I was a failure, but at least my wife loved me for the loser I was. She would never leave me. At least, I do not think she would ever leave me. Chapter 2. I fucked my wife last night. It was 12 hours to Miami, Oklahoma. I had to backtrack an hour north to St. Clair, Michigan to pick up Marcus, which turned the total drive time to 14 hours. The plan was to hit every casino along the way to Vegas and rake them over the coals. Marcus was a degenerate gambler, but he made a solid bankroll with 8 years of gambling. Marcus was able to turn $20 at blackjack into $300 in one night, and over time, he turned that first investment of $20 into $23,295. He was a lucky Irish bastard, and even he knew it. Plus, he could count cards. It was 4 in the morning when I left Detroit and arrived to Marcus's about 4:59. He packed what he had in the car, and away we went. 13 hours to Miami, Oklahoma. I don't know where to begin. I feel lost. I've chosen my future, but I have a problem letting go of my ever-imaginative and never-ending love of writing. Work dulls me. I can see it for myself. The quick wit of creation is gone, and the exhaustion has set in. Similar to when hippies have to buzz their hippie hair and join the corporate workforce. I have no drive to fulfill my love for writing anymore, but yet, here I sit, sulk writing. It's the end of a new beginning, and it's all the best pain one could ask for. I hope with this last trip, I can settle my wanderlust, and hopefully, I can get my job back. My life of yore will remain a distant memory I may cherish forever. I said to Marcus. You wrote that in a diary, he asked. I've been journaling lately. Jesus Christ, you're fucked, he said, scoffing. It was Friday the 13th. I was thinking about how leaving and being on the road was hard. I had done this same trip 10 years ago, but I had no one to miss back when I was 20. It felt the same, but different, in a way I couldn't really explain. We listened to Infinite Jest on audio for a bit, which was boring, and I began to fall asleep at the wheel. Bukowski entertained us for most of the ride to Miami, Oklahoma. It was so windy in Ohio, the birds had a hard time flying against the wind, just kind of floating there, stuck, which I likened to how I felt my life was going. We began laughing at the scene in Factotum. I fucked my wife last night, which neither of us would do for the next 13 days. I kept watching the fuel like an hourglass, slowly dropping, trying not to think about how bored I was. I had no flower cannabis, just dosed edible mints, 100 of them, which weren't really doing what I needed them to do, but it was something. I decided to take a handful. It looked about 10 or 12. When the high hit, I couldn't stop thinking about Henry David Thoreau's quote, how most men lead lives of quiet desperation and go to the grave with the song still in their heart. When was my self-loathing going to stop? Rain, wind, and hail in Illinois all at once, like the state was trying to get us to turn around. Then Missouri opened up with rolling hilled highways. We hit 120 miles per hour for long stretches and over the hill peaks using the sight lines. Marcus pulled out binoculars to spot cops before they spotted us, which felt insane, but also made perfect sense at the time. St. Louis had great graffiti, better than Indianapolis. Past St. Louis and deeper into Missouri, I noticed something about a cluster of cars on a wide open road that makes you realize one asshole is holding up the line. It's always one asshole, never two, never a group, just one guy ruining it for everyone else. We kept passing signs for Uranus Fudge, which had the most ridiculous advertising I've ever seen. Big fun in Uranus. The best fudge comes from Uranus. Explore Uranus. They really leaned into it, and I respected it. We were passing Joplin, and I couldn't help but realize how much I loved red licorice. There was something about licorice on a long road trip. It felt necessary. Before I could wrap my head around the fascination of red licorice I was having, we arrived in Miami, Oklahoma, at the prestigious Buffalo Run Casino and Hotel. Chapter 3. Jessica. Marcus was struggling with something I hadn't yet pried out of him. We sat in the muggy hotel room, waiting for the air conditioning to cool us down before dinner. It was 89 degrees, and back home, it was 39. We hadn't adapted to the heat yet. When is this fucking AC going to work? Marcus said, frustrated. What kind of dump did you bring us to? It was $150 a night, Just relax. It isn't that hot here. You know, what's your problem? The only time you've said anything in 13 hours of driving is you have to piss, shit, or commenting on Bukowski's prose. I'm going through some shit, okay? Is it that fucking hard to understand? Well, help me understand then. I can't. You'll just play the parent and offer me advice I don't want to hear. What else should I do? We've been friends since 4th grade. I'm here to help if you haven't realized that yet, asshole. It's Jessica. What do you mean it's Jessica? I said calmly. The tension cooled. Marcus sat up from the bed and moved to the edge. He put his elbows on his knees, head down, and rubbed his face like he was applying sunblock. I don't know if I can do it. Get married? I asked. Correct. I want to feel alive again. The mundane life of a relationship getting more and more serious is more like milk curdling well past its end date. You should feel it's more like fine wine. Isn't this a Jeff Dunham bit? It is, but that's beside the point. Did you feel the same way before you married Emma? No, I said bluntly, shaking my head. Marcus fell back onto the bed. Well, I guess I'm fucked then. There is no turning back now. What scares you so much about marrying Jessica? What scares me? Everything. I'm locking into a life half-lived. I have no more freedom. Next, it's a house, then a baby, then a dog, then I'm doing 80-hour work weeks to support a life she chose that we can't afford, while she sits and does nothing all day. Well, she can raise the kid, take care of the house, and feed the dog while you work. That's the traditional life you wanted. I know, that's the problem. I wanted this, and now I'm second-guessing myself. Completely. You are completely second-guessing yourself. Live on this trip like you're never going to think twice. Live like you're going to go home in 13 days, knowing you lived your life to the fullest. I stood up, put my hand out, and he took it as I pulled him up and out of bed. I looked Marcus in the eye. Let's go take this casino for everything they have. Chapter 4. A physically valid driver's license. Sir, I'm going to ask you to leave, security told Marcus. I got the renewal right here. Michigan sent it. Yeah, I see that. But I can't take this. It's valid though. It's literally from the state. I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying I can't accept it. It has to be a physical, current ID. So what am I supposed to do? You're going to have to step off the casino floor for me. Are you serious? Yes, I'm serious. I don't make the rules. Now, you're not trespassing him from the property, correct? I asked. He is allowed to stay in the hotel, but we will ask him not to return to the casino unless he has a physically valid driver's license. Marcus got kicked out. His ID was expired, although he did renew it before our trip, but Michigan sent him a digital renewal paper instead of the print and staple kind, which apparently doesn't mean anything to anyone outside of Michigan. They didn't want to hear it, so that was that. He left to go to the hotel room, but before I followed him out, I put 20 in a slot and hit 75 immediately on a $20 spin, which felt like a sign. I stayed for a bit, played blackjack for about 5 hours, and walked out around midnight down $50. $5 profit, which is about as good as it gets for me these days. I walked into the room, and Marcus was there, just staring at the ceiling in bed, neck down under the covers. "You're back?" I said. "Yeah." "How'd it go?" I asked, intrigued. He didn't answer right away. "I went to Prairie Moon first," he said. "Yeah?" "They turned me away. Same shit." "Of course they did." "Then I went to the stables. Same thing. Nobody wants to hear about Michigan Digital anything. They keep fucking talking about this print and fucking staple shit. So, where'd you try after that? High winds. They let you in? Yeah, I talked to security for like 20 minutes. Guy finally said fuck it. I sat down on the other bed. So, you got your shot? Yep, he said shortly. And? He laughed, but more of a scoff. I tilted. How bad? He didn't look at me. All of it. I didn't say anything. $23,295. 8 years. Jesus. Gone? Blackjack? Same as always. High limit. What happened? I don't know. One hand turned into 5, 5 turned into 20. I kept chasing it. I knew I was chasing it too. That's the worst part. The count was too volatile. It was like they jailbroke the shuffle machine and stacked the cards. It was off. It was all off. He finally looked over at me. I just couldn't stop. I kept thinking I'd get it back. You always do. Not this time. He went back to staring at the ceiling. I have nothing now, he said. You've got something. Like what? You've got the ability to do it again. He shook his head. I don't know if I do. You do. You turned 20 into that. Yeah, over 8 years, and now I turned it into nothing. We sat there for a while. You hungry? I asked. No, he said disappointingly. You should eat something. I'm good. You're not. I know. I leaned back and looked at the same ceiling he was looking at. My favorite poet was Aeschylus. You know this anyway. He wrote, in our sleep, pain, which cannot forget, falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. Go fuck yourself, Jack. Will do. Marcus turned and shut the side table lamp off. We laid there in the pitch black. I could feel the shame radiating off of him. Tomorrow was a new day. I just hoped he could see it that way. Chapter 5. No one wants to read that shit anymore. We left Buffalo Run right at checkout, 11 on the dot, and Marcus insisted we stop at the Hard Rock in Tulsa. I stayed in the car to edit an old short story I haven't submitted to hundreds of literary mags and publishers. One of the first ones I ever wrote, trying to force it into something workable, was still an option. He came back after about an hour. Everything okay? I asked. No. What happened? I lost 3 months of mortgage. How much is that? 6 grand. I looked over at him. Marcus. I don't have any runway, he said. What do you mean? I lost my job a month ago. I didn't say anything. That money was supposed to be my cover, he said, to make it look like I was working, so Jessica didn't freak out. You serious? Yep. Are you drunk? 10-4. We sat there for a second. How's the book coming? He asked. Fine, just editing an old one. Why don't you work on something new? I don't know. Lost the lust for writing. He nodded. He looked at me with pity. The New Yorker didn't pick up Keep the Faucet Running? No. That's because it was too beatnik. No one wants to read that shit anymore. They want smut. Jessica reads this shit where, like, the vampires are like fucking the werewolves, and it's super detailed, like tongues doing swirlies on vaginas type shit. Thanks, I said. I'll take that into consideration. I've got an idea, he said quickly, as to change the subject. Of course you do. We only gamble in suits. I looked at him. What? Suits. It'll make me feel better. Less of a loser. Where are you getting the money for a suit? I cashed out my 401k 3 days ago. Jesus, Marcus, for how much? I said, with dissatisfaction. 14:4. We got back on the road, driving further in the red clay of Oklahoma. The bug cemetery on my windshield, in which I began to have a love-hate relationship, began to bother me. I had to clean it eventually, so I told Marcus, next stop I would do it. He grumbled, drunk and half asleep. The Oklahoma and Texas border had this canyon-esque feel to it. Not quite a canyon, but close enough where you notice it and then keep going. We stopped for dinner at the Big Texan, and Marcus couldn't keep himself contained, just going on and on about how cowgirls are diabolically attractive. The only thing in Amarillo, Texas, was a good meal and an even better good night's rest. It was windy as hell. Leaving the next morning, 70-mile-per-hour winds, the car was shaking the entire drive to Albuquerque, New Mexico. A piece of plastic from my driver's side mirror even fell off. We hit over 20 tumbleweeds. A surprise to Marcus, since he didn't even know tumbleweeds were real. He thought it was just a movie thing, similar to his revelation with cowgirls, although he did not show an erotic fascination with the tumbleweeds. Past Adrian, Texas, there were these vast, monument-type mountainous canyons just sitting there. I saw myself in them. They just existed as I did, weathering the storm, waiting for glory or disaster. We tried to get into Montoya, New Mexico, which was advertised as a ghost town, but it ended up being some cattle ranch you couldn't enter. We just looked at it from a distance and said to each other, "That's enough." There was nothing in Newkirk, New Mexico, except a gas station and a historic post office, which felt right, and was even more coincidental since we were listening to Bukowski's Post Office, which Marcus thought was the most boring book of Bukowski's catalog. Marcus needed more. "I fucked my wife last night." Scenes. The road went on. "You ever notice my neighbor wears thong flip-flops in the winter?" Marcus said. "Can't say I have." "I'm not kidding. Snow on the ground. Guys out there in thong flip-flops like it's July." "Maybe he runs hot." "No one runs that hot. I can see his toes are purple." "Maybe he likes it." "He doesn't like it. No one likes that." "You should ask him." "I'm not asking a grown man why he is wearing flip-flops in winter." "Well, I guess you'll never know then, eh?" We drove for a bit. "Let me ask you something," Marcus said. "All right. Do you actually love writing?" "I do." "Or are you just hyper-fixated on it because you're a little autistic?" "I don't know the answer to that question." Further we went. "You ever notice scary movies just sound like you're describing a fart?" I asked. "What?" he said, in disbelief. "Like sinister," I said. Marcus contemplated this thought. "Insidious," I added. "You might be onto something," he replied. "It follows." "The Conjuring." "Drag Me to Hell." "We are definitely onto something here," Marcus replied. "Drag Me to Hell sounds like you nuked your pants." We went quietly for a second. The road went on. "I like to drink Guinness in 2 sips or less," I said. "Why?" "To minimize the foam mustache." He looked over at me. "Is this a bit? One of your riffs?" "No, I'm serious. I cannot stand the foam mustache." "You look like an alcoholic." "Not really." "Just drink the beer." "I am drinking the beer." "Like a normal person." "I am," I exclaimed. "You're not." He shook his head. Onward we went. "The orderlies at my grandma's nursing home are out of control," Marcus said. "How so?" "They're supposed to be orderly. They're the least orderly people I've ever seen." "Disorderly orderlies, eh?" "Exactly. One guy fell asleep in a chair during the Elvis impersonator's show. That's not ideal." Marcus became flippant. "No, it's not ideal. What do you think about uncivil civil engineers?" I asked. Fuck off, Jack. Just asking. That's not even a real thing. It could be. You just don't know it yet. It's not. We drove for a bit longer. I have a problem with gourmet hot dogs, I said. What? There's no such thing. Here we go. I didn't know I was going to get a classic Jack rant on this road trip. Shouldn't you save this for your journaling? A hot dog cannot be gourmet. Why not? Because it's a fucking hot dog. You can make anything gourmet. No, you can't. Yes, you can. Not a hot dog. Why are you so against this? Because it's dishonest. It's not dishonest. It is. It's pretending to be something it's not. It's just a better hot dog. No, it's still a hot dog. You're getting worked up. Because it's ridiculous to think a hot dog can be gourmet. There was no reply. Marcus shifted his focus to the vistas out of his window. East outside of Albuquerque, around Wagon Wheel, New Mexico, we could see this brown fog in the distance. We didn't know what it was. It was just kind of sitting there like a wall, but moving towards us. The mountains around Albuquerque reminded me of the Appalachian Trail, but that didn't feel right either. Context matters. These were Southwest mountains, different in a way that's hard to explain, but obvious when you see it. There was a nostalgia for the mirage in the distance, that heat shimmering off the road. I inhaled deeply when I saw it. It brought me back to 20, when I first took this journey. My eyes began to well. It was like seeing an old friend you've forgotten, but recognized immediately, and all your favorite memories came rushing back in an explosion of happiness and comfort they once brought to you. Marcus had never been west of the Mississippi. All he could say was gosh dang and golly, just rubbernecking the whole way into Albuquerque like he was trying to take all of it in at once. We got to the Route 66 casino and hotel west of Albuquerque on the Laguna Pueblo reservation and checked into our room. We turned on the news, and it turns out we narrowly missed a 90-mile-per-hour brownout sandstorm passing through Klein's Corners. Apparently the kind where you can't see 3 feet in front of you. We wouldn't have even known what hit us. Part 2. Chapter 6. Take it easy. Just take it easy this time, I said. I am taking it easy. No, you're not. You say that, and then you don't. I will. Don't tilt. I won't. Don't chase losses. I won't chase. And no martingale bullshit. He looked over at me. I never fucking martingale. I'm due, motherfucker. You're not due for anything, I replied angrily. Everyone's due at some point. That's not how it works. It is how it works. It's not. He shook his head. You worry too much. You don't worry at all. Exactly. That's the problem. I'll be fine. You said that last time. I'll be fine this time. All right. All right. He agreed with me. We walked out of the room and made our way to the casino. I hit a slot first. 20 in, 230 out, which felt like a good start. Then roulette, 5 on 16, hit for 175. Blackjack was slower, 90 up off a 50 buy-in. I flat bet 15, got dealt a 6-6, split the sixes, won. Then I went to Buffalo slots and lost 200 like it was nothing, which made me reel it all in. Let's not get reckless. Second session, I tried to reset, went to blackjack, bet 25, dealt a 5-5, split the fives, won. Hit 3 side bets in a row somehow. Got dealt an 11, doubled down, won. I was up 415 for the night. I figured that was enough. I could live to gamble another day. Marcus didn't come back to the room for a while. When he did, he just sat down. How'd it go? I asked. He didn't answer right away. High limit, he said. Yeah? 1,000 a hand. Marcus, I know. How much? Most of it. Most of it? 14. I didn't say anything. What do you have left? 400. He looked at his hands. I thought I could get it back. I thought I could just win a few hands. I sighed. I didn't win a few hands. I lost 14 hands consecutively. It was too much investment to get the count. We woke up the next morning and stopped for coffee and muffins before Vegas. I ate while I drove and ended up getting crumbs all over my lap, covered in it. Marcus reached over and started wiping my crotch off. Whoa, 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 all good, partner. The crumbs are fine, I said. What? Don't touch my fucking crotch. I'm just helping you out. You're not helping, you're molesting. It's just guys being dudes. He laughed and leaned back. There were blown-out tires all over the road. I had been keeping track since we left, and we were at 371, which felt like too many to be normal. The trees in Arizona, around Flagstaff, started showing up differently, ponderosa pines mixed in with the mountains of the west, not like anything back home. On our way into Vegas, on US Route 93 from Kingman, Arizona, you'd see these side roads off the main highway, where the road ran straight up the mountains for miles, just a straight shot into nothing. If you took it, you wouldn't see anyone for a long time. And that was probably the point. I started to realize the people who live out here certainly don't want to be bothered. They moved to the middle of nowhere for a reason. We saw towns named Santa Claus, Chloride, Cyclopic, names that didn't feel real, but here they were. We passed the Hoover Dam and over the Colorado River. Then it just opened up, and there it was, Sin City, Las Vegas. Chapter 7, Discipline. We checked into the Flamingo and settled in. Can we talk? Marcus said. About what? Just, can we talk? All right. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, hands together. I've been thinking, he said. That's usually not good. Just bear with me. What is it? I want to sell you my life rights. I looked at him. For what? For a book. About what? This trip. Me. All of it. I didn't say anything. You can write about how I'm the biggest loser known to man, he said. That's a strong pitch. I'm serious. I know you are. I can't stop, he said. Not until I get it back, and you need something new to write. I leaned back in the hotel cuck chair. So, what are you saying? I'm saying I'll sell it to you. For how much? He didn't hesitate. $23,295. My original bankroll, just to get me back in the game. It's St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. I know my ancestors will be looking out for me. I looked at him and rubbed my face. You have to play it smart, if I do this for you. I know. So, what happens if I say yes? We sat there for a second. You really think this is a good idea? I asked. No. Then why are you doing it? Because I need this. I can't go home like this. I looked at him again. You're spiraling. I know. And I'm supposed to what? Write it? Correct. That's dark. So it goes. Vonnegut? Really? I said. I sat there for a while. Please, he pleaded. All right. You've got a deal. We shook hands, even though I was reluctant to do so. But I needed new material, and I'd be lying if I said this was a bad story. If we went back and changed anything, we wouldn't be here today. It's exactly how it needs to be, even if it doesn't feel like it half the time. I transferred him the money, and away we went, down the hallway to the elevators, and out into the lobby to the casino floor. It was 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I grinded blackjack for about 4 hours and lost $5. I tried to grind roulette, put 100 on, and lost it quick, then went back to blackjack and won 400 just playing straight by the book. We went to Caesar's poker room after that. There were 2 Asians at the table, one of them I swear I've seen, on Poker Go Live, a woman, the other guy I didn't recognize at first. There was also an Indian-looking guy, very recognizable, the kind of face you feel like you've seen before. After talking to him a bit, it turns out he was legit, said he was coaching the Asians, and he actually had 3 WSOP bracelets and a ring, which I didn't expect at the 1/3 table. At one point, the Asians got up and left. The Indian-looking guy with the glasses left after taking a couple bad beats from Marcus, just got up and walked out without saying much. Soon thereafter, a British woman came to the table, who we affectionately began calling Oasis, due to her being from Manchester. We bantered with her for a bit. She told Marcus he should get a boob job. That way he can play with titties all day. She had a smart sense of humor and was a whale at the table. The casino host checked on her frequently, and the dealers always referred to her as Ms. So-and-so. We left the table after the deck got cold. I lost 1,000 at poker. I went back to our room at the Flamingo, which we affectionately call the Mingo now, while Marcus stayed at Caesar's to grind blackjack. Marcus had a good first day, up 700 at one point. Then a 3 a.m. session brought him back down to about 100 up by the time he came to bed, which felt right for him. Maybe he was on the up and up. Him even having a profit was a good sign and showed his usual discipline. Chapter 8. Virgil's. The next morning we were at Virgil's BBQ for breakfast. Nothing special, just something to put in the stomach before the day got away from us. Marcus was quieter than usual, which never meant anything good. Someone approached me last night, he said. Yeah? Offered to stake me. I looked at him. For what? To get it back. What does that mean? My outstanding debt. How much? 24. You mean 2,400? No, 24,000. I stared at him. Marcus? It's fine. It's not fine. It's covered. Who covered it? The guy. What guy? The one staking me. That's a loan shark. It's not a loan shark. It's a loan shark. He said, I've got 24 hours to pay him back 30. That's a loan shark. It's not. It is. He shook his head. I'll get it back. You said that before. This time, I will. I didn't say anything after that. I didn't tell him my agent called while he was sleeping, offered me an $80,000 advance because Keep the Faucet Running got picked up by a national publisher. It didn't feel like the right time to say it. After breakfast, we went to the Bellagio high-limit room and I just watched. Marcus was playing 1,000 a hand like it didn't mean anything, like the number wasn't real. The luck of the Irish wasn't there. I watched him play 47 hands of blackjack and he just bled out until 47,000 was gone. He was left with 695. He walked over to roulette and put it all on black. 56%, he said, pointing at the screen. It hit 00. That was that. The 24 hours came and went. The next morning, there was a knock at the door. Slow, deep, not loud. Knock, knock, knock. We opened it, and the guy just stood there. Let's take a ride, he said, in a slow, deep Armenian accent. We didn't say no. He drove us out to Red Rock, far enough where there wasn't anything around, just empty space and rock. He told us to get out. On your knees." We did. He put the gun to the back of Marcus's head. "I need that money back," he said. "Can you pay me?" Marcus didn't say anything. "Can you pay me?" "No," Marcus said. "Now, you roped your friend into it," he said. "He's going to die too." He cocked the hammer. I could see his forearm tighten, his grip change. "I have the money," I yelled. He looked at me. "I'll give you 30. Right now?" "Right now." "Get up." We got up. I wired him the money, and he checked it, stood there for a second, then nodded. He drove off and left us there. We started walking back. It would take us about 6 hours to get back to the Mingo. "Where did you get 30 grand?" Marcus asked. "Keep the faucet running got picked up," I said. 80 advance. He did the math quick. "So you've got 50 left." "Yep," I said, kicking a small rock down the trail. "You're going to be a famous author anyway," he said. "There's more coming." I didn't say anything. "You should just give me the 50,000, he said. "No." "Why not?" "I'll give you your bankroll back." "What about the rest?" I knew I would have to send his wife the mortgage money and the 401k cash out when we got back after he came clean to her about everything. I knew deep down that if she found out he was financially solvent, she'd leave him and they'd never get married, and that would probably send Marcus right back to Vegas, checking in, but never checking out. "I'll send your wife the mortgage money and the 401k when we get back." He looked at me. "After you tell her everything." He didn't say anything. "That's the deal," I said. He nodded, but not really. We got back to the hotel and didn't say much after that. We just went to sleep. Chapter 9. He sat there and sobbed. I woke up the next morning to Marcus in his suit. "You're all ready to go?" I said. "No," he said. "I already went." "What?" "Couldn't sleep last night." I looked at him. "It's all gone," he said. "What do you mean, all gone?" "The entire bankroll." He started crying. "Just gone." I didn't say anything. He sat there and sobbed, and I didn't have it in me to console him. He was a degenerate, and he needed to realize that. It was almost time to check out anyway, so we packed up and got on the elevator. When we hit the lobby, the doors opened and Oasis was there, right outside the doors, like she had been waiting. We stepped out, and Marcus just kept walking. "How'd Vegas treat him?" she asked me. "Not good. He lost $114,385, I said. "Keep his head up for him," she said, and kissed me on the cheek. "He's got the luck of the Irish, and you are going to be just fine, Jack Robert." She stepped into the elevator. The doors started to close, narrowing down to about the width of a shoe. "Wait," I said, putting my arm in. "How'd you know my—" The doors opened again. There was nobody there. I stood there for a second, just looking at the empty elevator. I caught up to Marcus outside. "What did she say?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "She said something." "Nothing important. She knew I was Jack Roberts somehow." "How'd she know your name?" "I don't know." "You were playing as Bobby Sunday at the table." "I know." We loaded the car and got on the road, and we said, "Thank you" to Las Vegas. We stopped at the Hoover Dam and got searched, which felt unnecessary until you realized it wasn't a national park. It's a National Historic Landmark and a hydroelectric facility run by the Bureau of Reclamation, which sounds serious. They didn't find anything. We got back on the road and made it to Flagstaff. We ate sushi, played pool at an Irish bar, and found a karaoke night on a Thursday. We met a Democratic lobbyist who said he gets the natives on the res to vote to swing elections. Met a guy who loads trains for Purina, who talked my ear off about the difference between Mick and Mac in surnames like it mattered more than anything else in the world. I even met a Navajo man and bought him a beer for all the troubles. He taught me how to say my name is Jack in Navajo. She-a Jack. We drove Flagstaff to Amarillo. Before we rested in Amarillo, I wrote my wife a postcard. Close your eyes and I will be there in the morning. We decided to drive straight from Amarillo to Detroit. No stopping. Just getting home. There was a magnet of love that drew me home. We had a 20-hour drive ahead of us. We talked about how we needed to work on ourselves because no prostitutes came to flirt with us in Vegas, which felt like a low point, but also something to laugh at. The Punjabi-specific rest stops and dinner stops from Arizona to Texas blurred together. All of it the same. I drove and drove and drove, straight, sort of. The sky turned into a Petoskey stone-stained darkness, like a fractal geodesic dome of sacred geometry sitting over us. The signs started to trail as I passed them, like I was tripping on LSD. If it wasn't for a Nazi at a truck stop strip club in Rolla, Missouri, selling us meth, I don't know if we would have made it. I couldn't tell how many times I wept on the ride home. The road has a way of putting into perspective how much I love the ones I do. Chapter 10. The Editorial Team. It was a year and a half later, the day of Marcus and Jessica's wedding. Keep the Faucet Running had been published for 3 months and sold 100,000 copies, a New York bestseller. I was getting ready in the groom's suite when my agent Bill walked in and handed me a letter. I opened it. Penguin Random House, 1745 Broadway, New York, New York. Mr. Jack Robert, thank you for submitting your manuscript, An American Comedown. We have reviewed your work carefully, and we are pleased to inform you that we would like to move forward with publication. Your manuscript presents a distinct voice and a narrative that feels both contemporary and grounded in a long tradition of American storytelling. There is an honesty in the work that carries it forward, and we believe it will resonate with a wide readership. We would like to offer you a publishing agreement under Penguin Random House, with standard terms to be outlined in a forthcoming contract. Our editorial team looks forward to working with you to prepare the manuscript for release. Congratulations on this achievement. We look forward to welcoming you to our list. Sincerely, the editorial team. Penguin Random House. Marcus came out of the bathroom. You ready, old pal? What you got there? He asked. Nothing important, just another rejection letter. Marcus threw his arm around me, and we exited the suite. We stood at the altar, me as his best man, him as the groom, both of us in suits again. Except this time, he wasn't gambling, he was waiting for his winnings. I leaned over to him and told him I was finished with the book, about 2 friends in a post-youth existential crisis who savagely and degeneratively gambled away their life savings and somehow came out of it with a smile and stories to laugh about for years to come. You were right, I whispered to Marcus with a wink and a nod. I told you it was going to be a good story. Before I could say anything back, the pianist started playing Here Comes the Bride, and that was it. I stood there and watched him, admiring the man he had become, and I couldn't help but shed a tear, not just for what we went through to get here, but because he finally understood something he couldn't see the whole time, that all he had to do was settle down and let life take its course. But I also realized something. In this moment of clarity, everything comes to a peak, but at some point, you have to come down from that peak, which I affectionately call an American Comedown. Keep the faucet running. Jack Robert. Saturated with themes of persistent hope, this journey is less about loss and more about connection. This book is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events or locales is entirely coincidental. For Apartment 411, 1635 North Martel Avenue, Los Angeles, California, 90046. Note: in the past, I started every idea I had, noting my physical setting, to later remind me where I was physically at the time. This idea was marked 2015, coming from the sunroom on Love Street. A memory from Apartment 411. I had been drinking moderately at Harvard and Stone and around Little Armenia the night before Sadie Lou was hit by a car. She was fine. The driver said she threw herself in traffic. She didn't want to go home. Sadie Lou was the daughter of a farmer. Chapter 1. Fred's. There she was, at the spot I often lingered too long at, Fred's. It was the kind of coffee shop that knew you just by the way you took your coffee. Fred once told me, "Dudes who order anything peppermint are definitely into flogging." And I believed him. The shopkeeper's bell announced my entrance. I stood at the entrance, paused, hoping she hadn't seen me staring at her. She was busy, writing on her prehistoric MacBook. The scent of burnt coffee and fruity vapes hit my nostrils, an unfortunately familiar embrace. Rosalie was impossible to miss. She was a bold contrast to the dreary interior of Fred's, with her dark, thoughtful eyes and a smirk on her face from whatever the hell she had been writing. Rosalie was a woman who seemed to pull at the strings of my little puppet arms. I'd do anything for her. But why was she here today? Her last day in the city, the day she was supposed to disappear into the folds of some glossy magazine in Philly. I walked to the counter, and Fred began making my order, my voice calmer than I felt. "Small coffee, no cream, 4 sugars." "I know the drill," Fred remarked. "You're all set, buddy," he said, handing me my coffee. Rosalie and I were both writers for a print magazine that was converting to digital called Greed. She ran a column called Fifth Wave Femme. While I oversaw anything that was published on a digital platform, I guess you could call me an editor-in-chief, but only I really knew what that meant. I grabbed the steaming mug and made my way to where she sat. "How's it hanging, Rosalie? Mind if I sit?" She looked up, that same smirk playing on her lips. "Well, if I told you, I don't think you'd want to fuck me anymore, would you?" "What do you mean?" I replied. "Don't you know the question, 'How's it hanging?' is sexual innuendo for how a man's penis is hanging," she snappily replied. I choked on a sip of my coffee and cleared my throat. "Yeah, Rosalie, no, I didn't know that. I guess I would not want to fuck you if you had a penis." "Oh, fuck you, Adler. You'd totally fuck me if I had a dick." She laughed. Her tone called bullshit. The old veteran at a nearby table seemed a little too interested in our exchange. A woman with a dick sounded like something he was into. Before I could gather my wits, I was staring off at nothing again, lost in another mindless gaze that had nothing to do with the this or that of life. I often stared off into nothing. "I'm sorry," I sighed. "It was a late night last night." Yeah, it was." Her voice was soft with memories of an evening spent under a glow of neon signs, just talking about ourselves, who we were, who we are, and who we wanted to be. I loved her, and I knew for a fact I loved her. I didn't know if she loved me, or if she just liked the idea of me. She's the only one who's ever read my personal writing, the stuff I really want to work on. I lusted to be a real writer, not some table jockey spitting out gutter news for teens and young adults. I had aspirations to be something better. She was a writer like me, but where my words often felt grounded in the piss of Detroit's streets, hers seemed destined for higher places. She'd come from Los Angeles, and now she was off to conquer Philly. I always wanted to go to Los Angeles. Maybe I'll go. Actually, I think I will. Tomorrow, or the next day, soon, I thought to myself. There was a silence, thick and uncomfortable, as if our eyes were too heavy to look at each other. I told her I wasn't going into work, that I needed rest. But the truth was, I didn't want to be anywhere she was going. We both knew how this was going to end. That was the hard part. Rosalie nodded, pretending to understand how I felt. I don't know how a girl like you ends up in a city like this, I told her. She chuckled, dry and restrained, not like a ha-ha laugh, but a hair laugh, like she had nothing to say. But she did. I love it here, but I'll love Philly more, and then I'll come back and be with you. There it was, doubt. Doubt was a rank and bitter horse pill, harder to swallow than my overly sugared black coffee. She acted like she loved me, but I think if she really did love me, she wouldn't be leaving me. Chills ran down my back, and the hair on my arms stood up. No woman, and I mean no woman, has ever made me feel that way she does. We left Fred's together. Her presence by my side was a reminder of what was to come. Outside, I flicked my cigarette into the road, watching the hot scatter across the concrete, a small act of kindness for the city that wasn't good enough for her. You know those things will kill you one day, she teased, nudging me with her elbow. Yeah, c'est la vie, right? I replied. Something I think you'll always remember, Adler. There's nothing like the present. Her words were soft, a whisper meant only for me. And then she kissed me, just a brush of her lips against the corner of mine, which was a promise, a goodbye, and a fucking burden. I watched her walk away, her steps confident and sure. It's your birthday. Live a little, maybe work a little too. She called over her shoulder without looking back. I decided a little work wouldn't hurt the old noodle. Inside, the office building towered over me, drab and uninspiring. The pot brownie I'd unwisely consumed earlier began to assert itself, a slow, creeping realization that maybe, just maybe, everything was about to change. I contemplated life, love, and the infinite spaces between as I made my way upstairs where the real world awaited, with all its mundane demands. But in that moment, caught between what was and what could be, all I really wanted was for her to say, let's get out of here and let's run away forever. Just me and you, until the end of our days. While I was standing at the office door, staring at the chipped paint and faded gold lettering, I thought, how could this day get any worse? Just walk into the fucking office, sit down at your desk, and do your fucking job. That's exactly what I did. At my office desk, I contemplated what the fuck was I doing with my life. Our news lately? 10 ways to smoke weed out of random household items. Conspiracy theories that barely held up under the weight of their own nonsense. The pinnacle of journalistic integrity was right here, right now. I sat reading a freelance article submitted by a kid named B. Booth. He was 16 and he could write. Rosalie waltzed into our lives from Hollywood with her bright ideas and her parties, dosing everyone with acid in some misguided attempt to get our writing careers out there. To her credit, some of those careers were technically out there now. Lenny, our very own conspiracy theorist know-it-all, is about to debut a segment on the History Channel about the extinction of dinosaurs. Not exactly a conspiracy, but the man had a borderline erotic fascination with prehistoric lizards. Lenny was also a blogger and moderator on Detroit Bware, a site for local conspiracies, and posted about alleged vampires running a nightclub called the Lilac Club. Being published often, Lenny was really the only legitimate and avid writer. Besides Rosalie and Lenny, the rest of us would struggle with publishing a high school newspaper. Before I could fully sink into my haze, Rosalie herself breezed into my office, smelling like coffee breath and presenting disorder. She had that annoying knack for showing up just when I wanted to be alone. "Adler, what's the plan for your birthday?" she demanded, leaning on the edge of my desk like she owned the place. "Rosalie, I don't know," I said, not bothering to look up from the blank document on my screen. "Adler, how fucking high are you right now? Were you high this morning?" "No, actually," I replied. "Weed brownies take a while to kick in. Timing is everything. You know about timing, right?" I was implying that she was leaving right when I was falling for her the hardest. I only hoped she got the hint. She groaned, running a hand through her hair. "Well, get it together, man. I leave tomorrow, and today is your birthday. Can't you see that I want to spend one last day with you?" she said. There it was, the dagger through my heart, the final blow. She should just put me out of my misery right now. Why was she adamant about being mine, but yet had to leave? "Okay, here's the plan. I'm going to go home, sleep this highly potent pot out of my system, and then tonight, everyone from work is going to Fred's for drinks," I said, hoping she wouldn't go. "And are you actually going to be there? You're not going to stand us up like every time we go to Fred's, right?" she asked, crossing her arms like my disappointed mother. "You already know the answer to that," I muttered, standing up. I grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair and slung it over my shoulder, my head pounding from Rosalie's interrogation. The office was buzzing in its usual disjointed milling, keyboards clacking, voices arguing over something irrelevant. The constant smell of the fucking vapes. I stepped out into the cold, crisp air. It was October in Detroit. The street outside was bathed in the art of a blossoming city. I lit a cigarette and took a long drag, trying to exhale the bullshit. It didn't help much. As I hit the curb, Ted, a rogue taxi driver, rolled up. The same beat-up Prius he always had, its paint chipping in places that looked like bad memories. Ted rolled down his window. "Brah, what's good?" he said, smiling and nodding his head. I took one last drag of my cigarette before flicking it into the street. "Just another day in paradise," I said. I climbed into the Prius, the familiar smell of stale coffee and worn cloth seats hitting me like a warm blanket of cheap pussy and black ice. Ted pulled away from the curb, and for the first few minutes, the ride was silent except for the low rattle of the engine and the faint sound of some reggaeton playing on the radio. But the silence didn't last. "So, you gonna tell me about it?" Ted asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I sighed. "It's Rosalie. It's always Rosalie. She's like a drug you can't quit. Burns you every time, but you keep smoking up anyway. You get it." Ted nodded, like he'd heard it all before. "Yeah, brother. I know what you're saying." It all came pouring out. The office, the absurdity of our news stories, the weed brownies, the birthday I didn't want to celebrate. By the time I finished, Ted looked like he wasn't sure whether to cry or kick me out of the car. "You've got a hell of a predicament, Adler," he said finally, pulling up in front of my building. "Not sure if that's a compliment or not, but take it for what it is. You'll figure it out. You always do." "Thanks, Ted. You're a good listener." I said. Inside my apartment, I kicked off my shoes, shrugged off my jacket, and sat on the end of my bed. I fell backwards, the ceiling fan spun lazily above me, and for a moment I felt like the world might stop spinning if I stared at it long enough. Rosalie's voice still echoed in my head, piercing and gnawing. I closed my eyes, letting the day fade into the background noise of the city. And as sleep took over, I wondered if tomorrow would be any different. Probably not, but there was always the chance, slim as it was, that something could change. Chapter 2. Apartment. I woke to pounding. The pounding persisted. Next thing I know, Rosalie comes in through the apartment door. "Hey, what the fuck?" I mumbled, disoriented by the abrupt intrusion into my peaceful solitude. "Breaking. Idiot keeps key under apartment hallway mat," she said sarcastically. I grunted. "What time is it?" I squinted at the clock as my head fell back onto the pillow. "5," Rosalie replied, her voice slicing through the grogginess of my evening haze. "Why are you here so early?" I asked. She came to the foot of my bed. "Well," before I could process her intentions, she leapt into my bed. Her proximity was startling. Given she was leaving tomorrow, and she was just too close. Close enough for me to notice the faded marks where her ears had once been pierced. Our eyes locked. It was as if the world ended, but not ours. "Adler, I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's okay, Rosalie," I replied. A moment of silence came between us. My muted confessions of love didn't help. Finally, I found the courage to articulate the truth that had been simmering on the pan of life. "Rosalie, I love you." Her response was immediate, a whisper coated with vulnerability. "Adler, I wish I could say that same thing." We remained there. Everything I thought was true. I'm always right, and that's the problem. The coolness of an October night developed within us as we walked through Midtown Detroit. We interlocked our arms with one another, holding hands to keep warm. Rosalie had a way of anchoring me to the memento. We arrived at Fred's. The crew knew I didn't mingle much outside of work, so my presence was a testament to my unspoken camaraderie. I made my rounds, offering hugs and heartfelt thanks for their show of solidarity. Amidst the clink of glasses and the murmur of familiar voices, the 13 of us downed shots of whiskey, followed by beers, courtesy of Fred. Fred approached me with a grin. I shook his hand, grateful for the simple consistency of his friendship. Later, as I stood trying to express my gratitude to George and Lenny, the weight of unshared wants pinned me against the wall with a blade in my gut. My attempt to load my confidence to plead with Rosalie not to go faltered. Depression, that uninvited spectre, began to cloud over me again. I excused myself, retreating to the bathroom. The man staring back at me from the mirror was a stranger. Numbness spread across my face as existential questions haunted my mind. Who was I? Where was this all going? I wish I could remember who I told Rosalie I wanted to be. The problem was the truth, and the truth was who I wanted to be involves her. In all essence of the truth, I want to be the man who gets to be with that woman, Rosalie. I left the bar and found myself wandering up a secret staircase in Fred's. The night could throw whatever it wanted at me. Beggars, thieves, I didn't care. All I wanted was for Rosalie to follow me. By the time I turned to look for her, I was already on the roof of Fred's, sitting on the edge of the rooftop, alone with the stars. Chapter 3. Shoestring. I woke up early, the sting of last night's unused wisdom still fresh, a dull ache settling in my bones. At first I panicked, feeling the empty space beside me in bed was something I guess I should get used to. The sound of water running in the shower calmed me. Rosalie hadn't left. Not yet. Maybe it was me. Not just me, but maybe my deepest insecurities, painting me as a caricature of desperation. The shower stopped just as I wished, like a Catholic prayer. The timing couldn't have been worse or better, depending on how much you wanted the world to crumble. I slid back into bed, a mask of calm painted over a rush of pain. Rosalie emerged with a towel wrapped around her body, radiant and oblivious to the storm she'd just stirred in my chest. "How'd you sleep?" she asked. "It was good. A little hungover, but I feel great," I replied. "Adler, I'm sorry I'm leaving," she began, her voice exhausted with a confession I already knew. A tight-lipped smirk stoned my face as I shrugged, trying to be cool and show her. I didn't care, even though she knew that was bullshit. "I just can't bring myself to love you. You're a crappy underground writer, wannabe poet, who's just wishing and praying to get lucky. You have no real talent. You're not Kerouac, and the closest thing you'll ever be to Bukowski is a drunk," she said. She had a way of being brutally honest, direct, and to the point. "That's interesting. Oddly enough, I feel the same way about myself." Her words destroyed me. I threw on my jeans. "Let's go to the airport. You're going to be late for your flight." The ride to the airport was silent, each of us lingering in our own edits of this chapter. Maybe she would have stayed if I didn't spend so much time trying to be other people. But the problem was, I wasn't trying to be like anyone. I just let myself go. I don't really think about what's next. I just like what I like. And if it so happens the things I like inspire me to be like the things I like, well then, I guess, that's me. We arrived to where she was to leave and never return. I couldn't make her love me, and I was starting to think there was no one to love me. "No hard feelings, right?" she asked. "Yeah, no hard feelings," I said, with a half-cocked smirk and nod. A crescendo of weight lifted from my shoulders. I don't know what made me crazy about this woman. "We'll see each other again," she said. "I really doubt that," I replied. "We will," she said, getting out of the car. "My faucet will always be running for you," I said. "That faucet of love for me should probably stay closed, Adler." Like a ghost walking through a wall, she vanished, her steps inevitable. Why did I think, for some weird reason, her heart would have a change in feelings? I watched her disappear into the crowd, her departure a physical ache. That night, I packed for Los Angeles. Every shirt, sock, and underwear packed was packed with the intention that I was going to write a story that would make her mine. As I booked my flight, I lit a cigarette, the smoke a veil against the uncertainty hiding me away from my worst nightmares, not being anyone. Chapter 4. Bed and Breakfast. Life is like a novel. You are either writing your own or living someone else's. I wrote, reminiscent of Rosalie's words, as a bottle of red blend wine hit my lips. Here I was, in a bed and breakfast, on Hollywood Boulevard, fresh from the flyaway bus that brought me from LAX to nearly where I needed to be, all for $8. The host at the bed and breakfast was accommodating, promising not to book the other beds, reserving the entire space just for me. It felt like a warm welcome to this new city. LA was captivating, even just 2 hours in. I hadn't yet seen it in daylight, and the anticipation of the morning was eerie. From my initial impressions, the only stark difference between LA and Detroit seemed to be the housing prices, a hurdle, sure, but not impossible. especially since the costs of my wine and Marlboros remained comfortingly consistent somewhat. Maybe, just maybe, I could stay here forever. Time seemed to creep, more so than back home. It was fast, but slow. Leaving Detroit had always given me this sensation, as if stepping out of the city's boundaries had set the clocks to a different rhythm, their own rhythm, like jazz. I found myself missing the sight of the Big Dipper hanging over the Detroit River back home, where the night sky felt so close you could almost touch it. The night whispered promises of endless potential, and as I lay in bed, the sounds of the city lulling me into sleep, I wondered if the bright lights of LA would eventually feel like home, or if the road would continue to call my name, urging me on to the next destination, wherever and whatever that might be. Chapter 5. Coffee House. It was early September, almost a year since I had left, and I was nowhere near finishing anything worth writing. Hell, I hadn't even settled on a title yet. Was Rosalie still a concern? She seemed like a distant memory as I took another sip of my coffee. Natalie, the clerk at the coffee house, had become a fixture in my daily routine. Her fondness for my consistent presence had blossomed into something like friendship. She'd carve out moments in her day just to sit and chat with me, a simple act that somehow managed to anchor me to reality. I often wondered if she knew I loved her. I couldn't help love her. She was a spitting image of Rosalie, and she gave me the attention I needed. She'd ask insightful questions about myself and what I was doing, although everybody was always doing something in Los Angeles. Even the bums have gigs and routines. I saw one at an open mic I was at. Heartfelt as his poetry was, I was giving him $5 on Sunset the next morning. Nat and I were sharing a coffee while she was on her lunch break. "Come on, Adler. You haven't had any luck moving out of that Russian mobster's bed and breakfast. You should move in with me and my friends," she suggested casually, not even noticing I was lost in thought. "Seriously?" I asked. "Yes, why not? How much a month for the couch?" "Adler, maybe like 500. "Oh, well, you don't have to twist my arm." I chuckled. Before I knew it, I was packing up my scant belongings from the place I'd been crashing. Nat thought I was still at the Russian mobster's bed and breakfast, but I was staying with a girl in an apartment. Natalie didn't know that, though. I thought it was best to leave her in the dark about that part of my life. I left my Armenian sweetheart a note. To Mariam. "Here is to love, our final toast. Now it is known there is life beyond love. All my heart, Adler." Mariam was a stripper at Deja Vu on the boulevard. She spoke terrible English, which is probably why I got along with her so well. We couldn't understand each other, but when we made love, I made sure she knew how I felt about her. I just hoped my note made her smile. I knew it wouldn't, but I hated the thought of breaking someone's heart. As I packed my few possessions, it felt like the universe was finally aligning, like stars falling perfectly into place. This new arrangement with Nat wasn't just about a place to stay. It was a chance to reset, a chance to figure out what the hell I was doing with my life without the shadow of Rosalie looming over every decision. Moving in with Nat and her friends might just be the shift I needed, a shift towards something resembling a normal life, or at least a new chapter that didn't revolve around nursing old heartaches with an Armenian stripper. Chapter 6. Echo Park Bungalow. Walking into the Echo Park Bungalow, I already knew the cast of characters I'd be living with thanks to Nat's enthusiastic previews, which she lovingly referred to as the girlies. Wilma had a shaved head, very Sinead O'Connor. I could infer she smelled of patchouli, and indeed I was correct. Chelsea was your typical, "I want to be a fashion designer," turned future mum of 6. The welcome was far from warm. "Who the fuck is this, Nat? Not another one of your lost puppies, please." Chelsea's voice made me wince inside, and she pleaded, "Chelsea, relax. He needs a place to stay." Nat tried to soothe her. Chelsea squinted. Her eyes were narrow slits. "For how fucking long?" "Like 2 months, relax," Nat replied. "I'm fine with it," Wilma said, without looking up from her book. She was reading Berryman. "Not bad," I said snappily, with an enthusiastic smile. "Relax? For some random?" Her words stung, but Nat was unfazed. Chelsea's eyes gazed now, looking through me. "Smells great at here," I said. "It's Wilma," Chelsea said, rolling her eyes. She's seen right through my bullshit. I nodded, as if I never smelt patchouli before. Hard to forget, but I'll be damned if I wasn't going to try and get an Oscar for this performance. "I never smelt anything like that," I sniffed. "That's not Chanel No. 5, is it?" After I soothed and slithered my way into Chelsea's heart, I went to the nearest Ralph's to get supplies for dinner. I decided to cook for the girlies. After dinner, which went down better than expected, we all sat around to get to know each other. The awkwardness slowly cleared as the evening progressed. "Kay, Adler, what's the rundown? Where are you from?" Chelsea wanted to grill me. "Well, I grew up 13 miles north of Detroit. Then when I turned 18, I moved to Midtown." "Ugh, I hate Midtown Manhattan," Chelsea said. "No, Midtown Detroit. Do I look like someone who would ever want to be in Manhattan?" I replied. Her privilege was showing. "Chelsea, Adler used to be a writer at Greed magazine." Nat interjected, a note of pride in her voice. "Oh," Chelsea said awkwardly. "Greed was the only writing gig I actually became a fixture at. Greed was home, a little underground culture magazine with national publishing turned into a bought-and-sold whore, news for profit, yuppie-ran, social media-focused garbage pile. Now all the investors, these musicians and so-called artists, laid everybody off since Rosalie and I left." Shit," I said, as if I wanted everyone to know. "That I knew, they knew, I knew. I take it you like fifth-wave femme?" "Like?" Chelsea's head tilted forward as if she was looking at me through the top of her eyelids. "Rosalie inspired Wilma and me to kickstart a feminist book club." "Heh, cute," I said, taking a sip of beer. "Weird how life works out. I knew I couldn't escape Rosalie." "Yeah, dude," Chelsea leaned in. "You love her, don't you? Have you been reading her new column?" Nat interjected again. "Chelsea, let's not. Everything seemed to be going just fine until it wasn't. That was usual in my life. It seldom turned out. It didn't go well for a long time. And when I finally feel like things are looking up, life kicks me in the dick. I would fantasize about meeting Rosalie again, while also worrying about Chelsea and Wilma finding out that Nat and I weren't having too much of a platonic relationship. 7 months flew by, and there I was back at the same coffee house. Nat was finishing reading the last pages of my final draft I was working on, that still didn't have a title. I was always terrible with the titles. She loved it. We talked about the book for an hour, long enough for Roy Nest, an agent, to turn around and demand to read it, just to get us to shut up about it. "But what's it about?" I overheard everything about losing the this, getting the that, the relationships in between, and whatever else this guy stuck his dick in. "But what's the story?" Roy interrogated me. "The story is love, with a Portland, Maine backdrop. He'll never find another girl that will make his heart stop, no other girl for him. He cries, but only inside. He hopes to find the time to beg her to be with him, but he has to build the courage to climb that mountain of desperation. But the time drifts on. The sun at dawn reminds him of her peach skin in the summer. Every day he thinks of her. It might never be clear to him. She's gone, so he might as well be too. Roy shrugged and shook his head. You know, I get it, kid. I do, but who the fuck do you think you are? There was a 7-second pause. Me, I said. Roy grinned and laughed like the old man he was. I like the way you think, kid. Right on track. You can see the world in many perceptions, but you have to learn which one is best. Roy unfolded a napkin and wrote his number down with a Sharpie, put on his hat, and walked out of the coffee shop as if he was leaving the bar after a long night of drinking. The man was practically drunk. I sort of admired him for that. Nat and me took a long ride back to Echo Park and discussed everything with Wilma and Chelsea. They weren't excited. Something told me Chelsea had to get something off her tits. So, Adler and Nat, when were you going to tell us all about your midnight bone sessions? Chelsea questioned. Adler, what the fuck? Nat said. I didn't say anything. Chelsea, what is going on right now? I asked. Chelsea turned to Nat, and I knew something else was coming. Yeah, and Nat, you swore you took the same oath we did. No fucking guys until we elect a president that represents us. Chelsea said, crossing her arms. You're totally out of the book club. Adler, Wilma interjected, individualize yourself. Find eternal happiness and achieve your goals. Raise your vibrancy of life with happiness, and you will manifest your deepest ambitions. She inhaled deeply and filled her diaphragm. Yes, I know what you're thinking. We're all lesbians, and we took an oath to swear off men. But this is the crutch of fifth wave femme. Nat has gone and disgraced our oath, sleeping with a sleazebag. Womanizing piece of shit. No offense. Now, you must pay the consequences. It's time to stop learning and start knowing. Said best by Jerry Garcia. There was a thick blanket of somber warmth filling my face. That contrast to Wilma's positive, radiant nature, it seemed to have washed away and became a hammer to an anvil, striking me hard. The faucet of my love was wide open for Nat. I knew the longer the water would run, the harder it was to leave. It's time to keep this faucet from running, close up shop, and figure out what my next move was. I collected my things and happily left. I made my way to Chinatown and waited to manifest my deepest ambitions. I was like a spit-filled saxophone, choking and squealing for a note. I just wanted to be something. No, I wanted to be someone. I found myself a camp on San Pedro, farther down the road. Chapter 7. Grace. I woke up the next morning to my camp neighbor making coffee. Instant coffee and bottled water. Breakfast of champions. I gathered myself and went to Roy's place. When I got there, the alcohol was still wet on the floor from the night before, and it smelt like someone had been smoking cigars inside. Hey kid, you Adler? The burly man behind the bar grunted, his voice as rough as the thick grime of Los Angeles. Yeah, you know Roy Nest, I replied, squinting in the dim light. This is for you. He tossed an envelope across the bar with a thud. This place? It's like a speakeasy for writers, all ready to share insider gigs and pass along knowledge. You take this envelope, then you're allowed here. Remember, treat everyone the same here. Don't assume anyone's like you, and definitely don't get caught up in the wrong crowd. Roy sends his hello. You wanted to sell. So, he obliged. Leave the draft on the counter on your way out. Congratulations, kid. Welcome to Hollywood. Sorry about the cash. The devil doesn't write checks, he said, turning away, throwing a bar towel over his shoulder. I grabbed the envelope, left the draft I had taken me nearly 2 years to write, and made my way to the nearest bank. At the bank, I sank into a plush chair opposite a clerk, a young woman with curious eyes. For a second, I danced around the possibility of not opening the envelope. Finally, I asked her to open the envelope, scribble down the amount of the contents on a sticky note, and hand it back to me. She obliged, her fingers delicate, as she turned the note over to reveal the figures. $10,000. Not a fortune, but enough to breathe easier. A month's grace in LA, or 4 in Detroit. Please, cash out $5,000 for me and put the rest in my checking account. I directed, clearing my throat as if I had withdrawn $5,000 at a time regularly. With cash in hand, I wandered to the Amtrak station, deciding on a whim to ride the rails back home. I splurged on a superliner bedroom, cozy seat, 2 beds, a bathroom. It was a reckless $2,000 farewell to my sudden big win, but the romance of the rails called to me. I always loved the Amtrak. As the train rolled through state after state, I witnessed America unfurl through my window, each landscape a thread in the fabric of generations past. The journey was a revelation in slow motion, life's majesty unfolding mile by mile. By the time I stepped off in Royal Oak, Michigan, I only had about $2,000 left, since I lost $650 playing dominoes with a Chinese man on the train and the rest on food. But worries about money took a back seat to the awe of my cross-country odyssey. I checked into Hotel Royal Oak. My heart ached at how this place tried to be a postmodern marvel with its inability to capture a single glint of charm. It falls flat on its face. I think I'd prefer the Palms Motel on Woodward. I was happy, though. I was back in Michigan, in the grimy, honest beauty of my home. Then my phone, ringing, shattered the silence. Roy's voice was violent, each word a bullet to the back of the head. "Adler, are you retarded? What the fuck are you thinking going on a train back to Detroit for 80 hours? Do you get off on getting wasted for 80 fucking hours on a train? I don't know if you gathered this, but I own you now. You don't go anywhere without my blessing. I suggest you get on the soonest flight to Los Angeles unless you want to die. Goodbye." The phone chimed to tell me Roy had hung up. I was left staring at my phone. The image of his rage burned my cheeks. Who the fuck did I just start dealing with? Here I am. I find myself a nice 2-year perch to write, figure life out. All that selfish bullshit you're supposed to think that makes you feel like you're making it somewhere. Shit. I had to scramble, pack up, and race back to Los Angeles. Fuck. As I hurried back to the rush and promise of Los Angeles, I couldn't help but chuckle. What a bizarre, beautiful mess. And I was sucking its tit for life, come what may. Chapter 8. The Last Call. It was almost midnight when I pushed through the door of Roy's bar, the East Hollywood shithole, where my new career began and where my life will probably end. The neon light behind the bar flickered and hummed a dull familiarity as I slouched into the familiar embrace of a corner booth, the only one in the place. "Adler," Roy walked up happily, his voice slicing through the haze of regret and solace. He slid a beer across the table, the inertia spilling a cold, crisp pilsner over my hand, cascading onto the tabletop. "On the house, but this the only one you get tonight." I nodded and took a swig, feeling the refreshing golden drink slip down, like a lady guiding your hand down her trousers. Such consent bolstered theta brainwaves, igniting my engines. "What's the score?" I asked, the glass resting against my lips. Roy wiped the corner of his mouth with his thumb and index finger as if he had been eating pasta, his movements deliberate. The score, kid, is you tell another story. You're a working writer now. My writer. My client. You work. You eat. We'll even set you up in a room at the motel down the street for as long as you want. Roy chuckled, his laughter rough around the edges. Adler, the world's a heavy place. You just try to lighten the load, or at least make sense of the weight, he said convincingly. I pondered his words, the alcohol smoothing the sharp edges of my thoughts. And what about how I feel? What about if I don't want to work for you? If you want to be a writer, you write, Roy said, leaning against the table. You're lucky you'll have someone paying your bills and giving you what you need so you can just shut the fuck up and write. He receded back into the booth. I took another drink, letting the idea sink in alongside the beer. I just don't know what I'm doing. I sighed. Let this soak into the tongue, stain the brain, and linger like an X after the door's locked. You are going to write, and I am going to sell. You are basically my writing slave now, and together we will make millions. I would get comfortable, Roy leaned in. Never going back. Go be yourself, Adler. Live raw, and when you're done, come back here. Drink's always on me, Roy said. Sure, I said, standing with a grunt. As I prepared to leave, Roy gave me some parting words. Remember, Adler, the devil doesn't write checks. With a chuckle, he handed me another manila envelope. I walked out, ready to figure out my next toilet bowl to swirl around. I stepped out into the cool night, the city's sounds echoing. I realized my life story wasn't just about where I'd been or who I'd be. It was about the mess, the wounds, the happiness, and the mourning. It was about finding a way to live with the stories, finding how to live with myself. I walked my way north up Serrano Avenue and was greeted by a bursting blue aura, the Hollywood Premier Motel. My new days would be a testament, a resemblance of that. Despite everything, the story goes on. And like all good times, the last call wouldn't be the end, but a toast until next time. Chapter 9. B from Los Angeles. 8 years later. The sunlight slanted through the cracked blinds of B. Booth's studio apartment in Midtown Detroit. The air was heavy in his apartment, with the aroma of microwave burritos and a hint of incense. B sat at his small, wobbly kitchen table, hands clasped over a paper plate of half-cold fries, praying. His eyes were closed, lips moving in a silent prayer. He stumbled into a sigh halfway through and finished. He opened his eyes, stabbed a fry with his fork, muttering, "Bless you, Father. Amen," and took a bite. It didn't taste like much because B didn't have very much to begin with. A decision had been weighing on him for weeks, but it was only this morning, staring into the abyss of his reflection in the bathroom mirror, that he decided school was over. Faith was over. Everything was over. Something new was about to begin. He just wasn't sure what yet. He gathered his belongings and pulled himself onto the street, where he awaited his chance to cross for some coffee. The streets of Detroit felt both alien and familiar as he stood on the curb, staring at two coffee shops next door to each other. To the left, IRL Coffee House, with its cold, brutal, overly minimalistic vibe and too cool-for-anything staff. To the right, Fred's, a no-nonsense joint with peeling wallpaper and a shopkeeper's bell over the door that jangled like it belonged in another century. B's stomach growled, and his brain whispered a Bible verse he often recited to himself. He crossed the street toward IRL. Inside, the place tried so hard to be different. The clerk at the counter didn't so much as glance up, nor do I think he even heard someone enter on account of the music that had to be as loud as sticking your ear up to a 1974 Harley-Davidson muffler. B ordered a large black coffee, his voice trying to speak over the egregiously loud music. The clerk turned without any acknowledgement of B's order, filled a to-go cup, and scrawled something on it before handing it over without so much as a smile. "Thanks," B said, but the word wilted as it left his lips, right there in mid-air. He paused, glancing down at the cup. The words, "Hail Satan," were scribbled in bold marker. B's grip tightened, so much his coffee cup exploded like a volcano. He expected apathy, maybe even subtle disdain. But this felt like a kick in the dick. He left and yanked the cross from his neck, yanking it hard enough to feel the chain dig into the back of his neck. Without thinking, he dropped it into a homeless man's cup, the sound of it clinking against loose change like wind chimes singing in a soft breeze. Pulling out his notebook, he flipped to an empty page to record himself, anger swelling in his chest. "Today," he began, his pen shaking, "I'm done with God, with school, with life. Someone wrote, 'Hail Satan,' on my coffee cup. What the hell is wrong with people? I moved from Los Angeles to Detroit, and now—" He paused, his anger melting into something closer to despair. "Now, I'm dedicating my life to being a writer again, and working a part-time job because writing isn't going to pay me shit." A car crept by. "Nice diary, faggot," a group of college kids yelled and sped off. He stopped the writing and threw his notebook against the wall. It bounced and clattered onto the sidewalk, unharmed. "Fuck!" he shouted, kicking his notebook down the street. He stood there for a moment, fists clenched, before the soft jangle of the shopkeeper's bell next door snapped him out of his spiraling thoughts. Fred's, the place he should have gone to in the first place. He pushed open the door to Fred's. The warmth of the place hit him immediately, not just the temperature, but the air itself. It smelled like burnt coffee and vapes, a smell B was nostalgic for. He loved the smell of vaporized, flavored water. It reminded him of many late nights in his college apartment, staying up late, reading Karak's The Dharma Burns, and listening to Miles Davis' The Blue Note. Fred's was like something that had been here longer than the city itself. Fred, a squirrely man with salt and pepper hair, stood behind the counter, wiping down a coffee pot with a rag that had seen better days. "I want a black coffee with 4 sugars in it," B said, "and please don't write 'Hail Satan' on my cup." Fred squinted at B, then chuckled. "Ah, I see you tried that shit show next door. That kid's a fucking psycho." B couldn't help but laugh, the tension in his chest loosening just a bit. "Tell me about it. I just gave up my religion and quit school to be a writer because of that guy." Fred poured the coffee, poured in the sugar, and handed it over. "That seems a little drastic, kid. I mean, over some minor incident, you're willing to throw away everything you got going for you?" "Yep," B replied. B took a seat at the nearest table, letting the warmth of the cup seep into his hands. It felt calming, in a way he hadn't realized he needed. He was halfway through his first sip when a voice shattered the quiet. "Holy shit. Is that B. Booth?" B looked up to see a guy standing in front of him, his face struck with recognition. "Holy fuck, George. What are you doing here?" B said. George laughed. "Dude, I live here. Do you know you freelanced one of our best articles? Why didn't you call me if you were coming to Detroit?" B blinked. "I had no idea Greed was even based in Detroit. Whatever happened?" George's grin faltered, and he rubbed the back of his neck. "Well, we were losing money and still growing as a company. Then our boss just disappeared after Rosalie left." B's stomach dropped. "Adler?" George nodded solemnly. George's face darkened. B leaned back, letting the weight of those words settle. George shrugged, his expression softening into something wistful. Listen, man. Adler fucked us all over. He left for Los Angeles, ends up getting that short story turned into a movie, and completely went MIA. No one's heard from him, saw him, nothing. He's gone in the wind. We were all close. Adler and Rosalie were like the matriarch and patriarch of the company. Adler was like a son to Fred and a brother to me. He just left without saying goodbye. And it's never about the goodbye, it's about being gone. That's what really matters. B's curiosity was piqued. What happened? George waved it off. Anyway, enough with the sad stuff. It's only been 10 years. You looking for a job? B raised an eyebrow. Well, yeah, I guess I am. George grinned. Welcome to the team, then. And just like that, B. Booth's life took a sharp turn, leaving the past behind as he stepped into something uncertain, something new, something that smelled faintly of burnt coffee and second chances. Chapter 10. Fred's again. B sat behind the counter at Fred's, watching the steam rise lazily from the coffee pots. The place was alive with the faint buzz of fluorescent lights, the soft clatter of ceramic mugs, and the quiet murmur of regulars trading stories about the weather, their art, or their last shitty shift at the bar. Fred himself was at the register, his slender frame leaning forward as he shot the breeze with an older woman buying a blueberry muffin. That'll be $2, Judy. Tell your husband I said thanks for fixing my truck, Fred said, sliding the muffin into a brown paper bag. I'll let him know, Judy replied, giving Fred a small wave as she left. The bell over the door gave its usual cheerful jangle, a sound B was starting to associate with home. B, Fred called over his shoulder, you want to learn how to make a proper French press? Or you just gonna sit there like a lazy alligator? B blinked out of his haze and straightened up. Yeah, sure. Show me. Fred smirked. Grab the beans from under the counter. The good ones, not that stale shit we save for tourists. Coffee's only as good as the care you give it. B obeyed, grabbing the bag of dark roast beans that Fred had been preaching about since B started hanging around. It wasn't an official job yet, but Fred didn't seem to mind B's presence. The guy was one of those rare souls who thrived on sharing whatever wisdom he had, even if it was only about coffee and broken-down trucks. As B ground the beans, Fred spoke, his voice low and steady. You know, coffee's a lot like life. You put in the work, the patience, the right pressure, and it'll reward you. Rush it, cut corners, and you'll taste it in the brew. Can't hide the shortcuts. Is that why you still use a French press? B asked, half smirking. Fred gave him a look. No, kid, I use it because I'm cheap. He chuckled, then gestured toward the counter. Pour the grounds in. You've got one shot to do this right. B followed the instructions, pouring the hot water slowly and deliberately, watching as the dark liquid swirled and sunk. The air filled with the rich, earthy aroma, and for a moment, B felt a strange sense of accomplishment, like he'd done something that mattered, even if it was just making coffee. Not bad, Fred said, taking a sip. You might just make yourself useful around here after all. The bell above the door jingled again, and George strolled in, his entrance as loud as his personality. Fred, B, my two favorite assholes. How's the grind? George called out, plopping himself down at the counter. Fred grunted. Still waiting for you to pay your tab, George. George waved a dismissive hand. Put it on my imaginary corporate card. We're all rich in spirit, aren't we? B laughed, handing George a mug of coffee. You here to mooch, or do you have anything worthwhile to listen to? George leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You'll never guess who I saw in Midtown last night. Fred and B exchanged a glance. Who? Fred asked, pouring himself another cup. George's grin widened. Rosalie Bauer. Fred froze, the cup halfway to his lips. You're full of shit. Swear on my unpaid bar tab. She's back. Saw her walking into some gallery opening on Cass. Looked like $1 million, as usual. B tilted his head. Who's Rosalie Bauer? Fred set his mug down with a little too much force. She's trouble, that's who. And if she's back, then Adler can't be far behind. B frowned. Adler? Adler Burns? The guy George was talking about yesterday? George nodded, his grin fading. The very same. And if Adler and Rosalie are about to collide again, well, what? B pressed. Fred shook his head. Kid, you'd better buckle up. Shit's about to get interesting around here. Chapter 12. The Office and Ted. The sun had barely crept over the Detroit skyline when B found himself standing outside an unassuming brick building, the kind you'd pass without a second thought if you didn't know better. The windows were lined with faded blinds, and a heavy metal scratched-up door bore a single tarnished plaque that read, The Company. B pushed the door open to find George leaning back in a squeaky office chair, feet on the desk, twirling a pen between his fingers. The place was a chaotic shrine to pop culture and irreverence. Movie posters, Polaroids, and magazine clippings covered the walls like a teenager's bedroom. The air smelled faintly of stale coffee and weed, and a stack of unopened energy drink cans teetered dangerously on the edge of a desk. Welcome to the madhouse, George said, grinning. Or, as I like to call it, where creativity goes to die. B glanced around, taking in the mismatched furniture and buzzing fluorescent lights. You guys actually run a company out of here? Define run, George shot back. Now, sit your ass down. Let's talk about a new gig for you. B pulled up a chair and leaned forward, trying to ignore the slight stickiness of the desk. George tossed a folder in front of him, its contents spilling out in a haphazard mess of handwritten notes, sketches, and coffee-stained documents. This is what we do, George explained, gesturing to the chaos. Content, articles, videos, memes, whatever the internet's hungry for. We're the buffet. B picked up a piece of paper covered in scrawled ideas. Top 10 conspiracy theories about Garfield the cat? He read aloud, raising an eyebrow. George shrugged. People eat that shit up, and if they don't, we make them. Welcome to modern media, my friend. Before B could respond, the door slammed open, and a man in his late 40s strolled in, clutching a takeout coffee cup like it was a lifeline. He wore a rumpled suit jacket over a faded band tee, and his salt and pepper hair was disheveled. This must be the new kid, the man said, eyeing B. I'm Ted. Don't fuck up. Nice to meet you, B replied, unsure whether it was a greeting or a warning. Ted plopped down on the couch, spilling half his coffee in the process. He didn't seem to notice. George, did you pitch him the Snapchat gig yet? George snapped his fingers. Shit, I forgot. B, you're on Snapchat duty. Daily content updates, memes, mini articles, whatever gets clicks. B frowned. I've never used Snapchat for anything other than, well, Snapchat. Ted snorted. Perfect. You'll fit right in. B opened his mouth to argue, but was cut off by the buzz of George's phone. George glanced at the screen and groaned. It's Lenny. Which Lenny? Ted asked, taking a sip of his coffee and wincing as if he'd forgotten how bad it tasted. Which Lenny? The only Lenny you fucking know. Give me a sec. George stepped into the hallway, leaving Bea and Ted in awkward silence. Ted leaned back, propping his feet on the coffee table. So, Bea, what's your deal? You one of those, I'm gonna change the world types, or are you just here to pay rent? Bea hesitated. A little of both, I guess. I just want to write. Ted nodded, surprisingly thoughtful. Writing's good. Just don't get too precious about it. This industry will chew you up and spit you out if you take yourself too seriously. Before Bea could respond, George reappeared, his expression somewhere between amused and exasperated. Change of plans. Lenny's got a lead on some freelance thing downtown. Bea, you're coming with me. Ted, hold down the fort. Fort's already fucked, Ted muttered, but he waved them off. Bea followed George out into the crisp Detroit air, the city buzzing with life as the morning commuters rushed past. George lit a cigarette, offering one to Bea, who shook his head. Suit yourself, George said, exhaling a plume of smoke. So, you ready to dive into the bullshit, or do you need a pep talk? Bea smirked. I think I'll manage. George grinned. Good answer. Let's go make some bad decisions. Chapter 13. Night on the Rooftop. By the time the sun set over Detroit, Bea felt like he had aged a decade. The office's constant whirlwind had a way of both thrilling and exhausting him in equal measure. He walked alongside George, who was still yammering about Lenny's lead that had turned out to be little more than an invitation to a sketchy art installation downtown. Something about a projection of Garfield memes on the side of an abandoned warehouse. I told you it was bullshit, George said, taking a long drag of his cigarette. But hey, that's the beauty of this city. You never know when bullshit might turn into brilliance. Sure felt like just bullshit to me, Bea replied, stuffing his hands into his jacket pockets. The chill of the evening air cut through the fabric of his hoodie, and he shivered. They reached Fred's, and the sight of its warm, inviting glow felt like a balm for Bea's coldness. Inside, Fred had already started closing up for the night. The bell over the door jingled, and he glanced up from the counter. You two look like you've been chasing ghosts, Fred said, wiping down a coffee mug with his ever-present rag. Worse, George replied. We've been chasing Garfield. Fred raised an eyebrow, but didn't press further. Instead, he nodded toward the back. Rooftops open. Go clear your heads. The rooftop at Fred's wasn't exactly a secret, but it wasn't advertised either. A rickety metal staircase led to a flat rooftop with mismatched patio furniture, an old grill that hadn't been used in years, and a stunning view of the Detroit skyline. It was a place for regulars and staff to escape, to drink under the stars and pretend the city wasn't crumbling around them. When Bea and George reached the top, they found Ted already there, reclining in a faded lawn chair with a bottle of whiskey balanced precariously on his head. Figured I'd beat you here, Ted said, lifting the bottle in a mock toast. It's been one hell of a day. George flopped into a chair next to him, pulling a flask from his jacket. Every day's one hell of a day, Ted. That's just the gig. Bea hesitated before taking a seat on the edge of the rooftop, his legs dangling over the side. From this height, the city seemed almost serene, the rumbling muted into distant sounds of traffic and the occasional siren. So, Bea, Ted said, sitting up and passing him the whiskey. What's your angle? You gonna stick around, or is this just a pit stop? B took a swig, the liquor burning his throat. He handed the bottle back, staring out at the skyline. I don't know yet. Feels like this place has its hooks in me already, though. That's Detroit for you, George said, leaning back in his chair. You're just hooked and reeling now. The three of them fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when there's nothing left to say and no need to fill the space. B let his thoughts wander, making the narrative outline of his day from the stories he heard in his head. Adler Burns, Rosalie Bauer, the strange, messy web that seemed to connect everyone at Fred's. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something much bigger than himself, something he didn't fully understand yet. You know, Ted said suddenly, breaking the quiet, I used to think this city was a dead end, spent years trying to get out. But now, hell, I think I'd die if I left. It's the only place that makes sense, even when nothing about it does. George laughed, a short, sharp sound. That's because you're just as fucked up as the city is. Ted didn't argue. Instead, he raised his bottle in another toast. To being fucked up. To being fucked up, George echoed, clinking his flask against the bottle. B hesitated, then nodded. To being fucked up, he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. They drank in silence after that, falling in love with the city before them, like a train-hopping vagabond. Just a bag of bones, waiting for the next play to come their way. We were all beautiful and tragic, all at once. B didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for now, he was content to sit on that rooftop, surrounded by strangers who felt a little like friends, and let the strange of the day slip away. Chapter 14. Halloween Magic. Halloween in Detroit was a spectacle. The city's streets seemed to exhale their own kind of madness, a strange mix of costumes, laughter, and the faint sense that at any moment the evening could spiral out of control. Fred's coffee shop was no exception, decked out with half-hearted decorations that looked like they'd been picked from a thrift store's discount bin. Orange and black streamers hung lopsided, and a plastic skeleton grinned crookedly from the counter. B walked in, just as George finished sticking googly eyes on a jar of sugar packets. "You're late," George said, without looking up. He adjusted the googly eyes with the precision of someone who took his ridiculousness seriously. "I didn't know there was a schedule," B replied, shrugging off his coat and tossing it onto a chair. He was dressed as a vampire, not because he'd put effort into a costume, but because his thrifted cape and hastily applied eyeliner were easy enough to pass off as intentional. Fred was behind the counter, wearing a Frankenstein mask that he'd already pulled up to rest on his forehead. "Kid, if you think Halloween's just another night, you've got a lot to learn." Ted appeared from the back room, carrying a tray of cupcakes decorated with frosting ghosts that looked more like blobs. He set them down on the counter and surveyed the room with a skeptical eye. "This the best we can do? This place looks like a party supply store threw up in it." "Relax," George said. "It's not about the decorations, it's about the vibe." Ted snorted. "The vibe? What vibe?" "Gentlemen, please," Fred cut in. "Focus. The party starts in an hour, and if we don't have at least 10 people here by 8, it's going to be a long night." B grabbed a cupcake and took a bite, frosting smearing onto his lip. "So, what's the plan? Just sit around and wait for people to show up?" "Pretty much," George said. "But don't worry, once the word gets out that we've got acid, people will flock like pigeons to bread." And flock they did. By the time 8 o'clock rolled around, Fred's was packed. The eclectic crowd ranged from over-enthusiastic college kids in elaborate costumes to regulars who'd thrown on a hat and called it a day. The room was electric, with the kind of energy that only came from cheap beer, bad decisions, and the knowledge that tomorrow's hangover was someone else's problem. B found himself near the back, nursing a drink and watching the fuckery unfold. Ted was arguing with someone dressed as a pirate about the merits of whiskey versus rum, while George had somehow gotten roped into a limbo contest in the middle of the room. Fred, still wearing his Frankenstein mask, was holding court at the counter, regaling a small group with stories that were probably exaggerated, but entertaining nonetheless. "Enjoying yourself?" a voice asked, cutting through the noise. B turned to see a woman standing next to him. She was dressed as a witch, her dark lipstick and sharp eyeliner giving her a striking, almost intimidating presence. "Yeah, it's something," B replied, taking a sip of his drink. "You?" She shrugged. "I've seen worse. You new around here?" "Kind of," B said. "Been here a couple of weeks. You?" "Long enough to know better," she said with a smirk. "I'm Kira, by the way." "B," he replied, shaking her hand. Before the conversation could go any further, the door gently opened, and the room fell silent. Rosalie Bauer walked in. She wasn't in costume, but she didn't need to be. Her presence was magnetic. Fred froze mid-sentence. George straightened up from his limbo position. Ted, who had just won his argument with the pirate, looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Rosalie," Fred said, his voice carefully neutral. "Didn't think we'd see you around here again." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's Halloween, Fred. Thought I'd stop by for old time's sake." B watched the exchange, feeling the tension ripple through the room like an electric current. Whoever Rosalie was, she clearly had history here. "Well," Fred said, breaking the silence. "Welcome back. Grab a drink. It's on the house." "Thanks," she said, glancing around the room. Her eyes landed on B, and for a brief moment, he thought she might say something. But she turned away, making her way to the counter. "Who's that?" B whispered to Kira. Kira raised an eyebrow. "Rosalie Bauer, you'll want to stick around for this. Things are about to get interesting." Chapter 15. Rosalie's Return. The party resumed after Rosalie's arrival, but it was a different kind of party now, the charged, uneasy kind. B watched her from the corner of the room, noticing how the crowd seemed to part around her, as if she carried her own gravitational field. She laughed at something George said, her voice carrying just enough to tease the edges of B's curiosity. "So, what's the story with her?" B asked Ted, who had perched himself on the countertop, sipping whiskey like it was water. "Rosalie," Ted said, smirking. "She's Adler's Yoko. If you're here long enough, you'll hear a dozen different versions of the story. None of them are flattering." B frowned. "She doesn't look like trouble." Ted laughed, short and sharp. "Trouble never does, kid. That's why it's trouble." George stumbled over to them, his face flushed from the alcohol and the effort of trying to keep up with Rosalie's quick wit. "You two hiding back here? You're missing the show." "What show?" B asked. George jerked his thumb toward Rosalie, who was now holding court in the middle of the room. She was telling a story, her gestures animated, her audience hanging on every word. Even Fred had paused his cleaning to listen. B couldn't hear the story from where he was standing, but he could see its effect. Rosalie had a way of commanding attention, of making you feel like her words were the most important thing in the world. B found himself leaning forward, trying to catch the thread of her tale. "Careful, kid," Ted said, his tone almost amused. "That's how she gets you." B turned to him, confused. "Gets you?" Ted shrugged. Rosalie's not a person. She's an idea. She lures you in just for you to realize she's an empty shell of a person and just wants to take out all her own trauma on you and blame you for essentially everything that goes wrong in her life. Fred cleared his throat, his voice cutting through the conversations of the party. Rosalie, he said, what brings you back to our little corner of the world? Rosalie smiled, and for a moment, B thought he saw something genuine in her expression, a flicker of vulnerability. I was just passing through, she said lightly. Thought I'd see some old friends. Fred didn't look convinced, but he let it go. Well, you're always welcome here. The rest of the party passed in a blur. B couldn't shake the feeling that Rosalie's return was more than just a casual visit. Something was shifting, and he didn't know whether to lean into it or run the other way. Chapter 16. Adler comes home. It was 2 weeks after the Halloween party when I walked back into Fred's. B was wiping down tables when the door jingled, and there I was, standing tall, unshaven, wishing I had the kind of presence that made you sit up a little straighter. Fred looked up from the counter, his eyes narrowing. Well, I'll be damned. I grinned. Fred, you miss me? Fred snorted. Like a failed assassination. What the hell are you doing back here? Same thing I've always done, I said, sliding onto a stool. Looking for trouble. George appeared from the back, stopping short when he saw Adler. Holy shit, the prodigal son returns. George, I said, nodding. Still writing short story fiction? Or did you finally go legit? Wouldn't you like to know? George replied, grinning. B stayed quiet, watching the interaction. Fred rolled his eyes. Don't encourage him. Over the next few days, I became a fixture at Fred's, slipping back into the rhythm of the place as if I never left. B watched me carefully, trying to piece together the man behind the legend. And then there was Rosalie. She showed up 2 days after me, and the tension between us was palpable. I had been following her as long as I had been following B. Chapter 17. The Last Word. It happened late one night, long after Fred had locked the doors and the regulars had gone home. I was organizing the storage room when I heard footsteps coming from the rooftop. I crept up the stairs, my footsteps silent. I slowly opened the door to the rooftop and looked around outside. Adler and Rosalie were on the rooftop, mournfully talking to each other, sitting on the edge of the rooftop with their legs dangling down. I watched as my heart pounded. I didn't know the whole story, but I could see the rawness in both of them, the wounds that hadn't healed. I didn't come back for you, Adler said. I came back because this place is the only thing that makes sense to me. Rosalie stared at him, her expression unreadable. I fucked up, Adler. I know, he said. Why can't we be together now? She asked. Because I think I lost all my love for you, he said. But you said you'd always keep the faucet running for me, she pleaded. I did, but you ran it dry. I wrote, I called, I sent flowers for all your achievements, and you didn't show me a single pulse you cared for me. I moved on, and now you realized I am all those things you said I wasn't now. Now is when you want to be with me? She looked down, weeping, then giving herself a shove off the side of the building. Adler sat there for a long moment before following her. I stepped out of the shadows and ran to the ledge where the contrarian lovers fledged, gaining their wings to fly together, forever. I fixated onto the skyline, the city bustling. I mumbled under my breath the Bible verse that often brought me comfort. His steadfast love endures forever. Perseverance, Percy, Jack Robert. 1. If my life had any introduction, it would probably be to the song Thank You from Led Zeppelin, and I'd probably be dancing. Ever since I was young, I loved to dance. It consumed me. That's why when I got my first pair of roller skates, I found my first true love, the roller rink, specifically my local rink, Ricky's Roller Rink, famously known as Ricky's. Now, I'm old, 55. Most of my old crew has corporate jobs, kids, wives, husbands, real lives. I never stopped, though. I might work at McDougal's making minimum wage, but I'll be damned if I give up my dreams, make enough money to open a roller bar, which everyone seems to be concerned with optics and liabilities, but I know it's genius and they're just jealous I came up with such a good idea. 2. It's Saturday night at the roller rink, and Paulie, the DJ, told me some sad news. I went to school with Paulie, and it was 1980 when we first stepped into Ricky's. Paulie was a terrible skater, definitely couldn't hang with my crew, but he quickly picked up the DJing gig in 1986 when we turned 16. Paulie's news ruined disco night. The rink would be closing if we didn't come up with $50,000. I couldn't even think of dancing tonight. I was heartbroken, so I packed my skates and went home. 3. I contemplated if my roller bar would really work out. Maybe it was time to focus on saving Ricky's. Maybe I could save Ricky's, and they'll rename it after me. I always dreaded my name. When the teachers in school called my name in class, it made everyone cringe. Perseverance, my father named me. He said it was after how hard my mother had to work to birth me, which ultimately killed her. When that happened, Dad packed up the house in Detroit and we moved to Burbank, California. 4. I decided to give my old crew a call. Maybe those big shots could help me out with some extra cash. I called Rosalie first. Hi, you've reached Rosalie. Please leave a message at the tone. Hey, Rosalie, it's Percy, from Ricky's way back when. So hey, I got a question. Could you help me out with 50 grand? Thanks. Call me back. Well, that went better than expected. Now let's see what Joey has been up to. Hello? Joey said over the phone. Joey, hey buddy, how's it been? Who is this? Oh yeah, it's Percy from back in the day. Oh, okay. What can I do for you, Percy? So, I'm looking to see if you could loan me 50 grand so I can save Ricky's. You're kidding, Ricky's? No, I know, man. It's a tragedy that place is going to close. I'm trying to save it. No, Percy, it's not a fucking tragedy. That place is a shithole. Yeah, but think of all the good times we had. Percy, we were kids. That was 40 years ago. What the fuck are you talking about, save Ricky's? Are you fucking retarded? I'm the highest ranked revenue officer at the IRS, and you want 50 grand to save some dump that would probably give you a disease every time you walked in. There was only 1 or 2 scabies outbreaks, and Paulie has this new method to stop the fungal infections. Percy, that's my fucking point. It sounds like you and Paulie are in a time warp, man. Maybe it's time to grow up, bro. There was a pause. Percy, please tell me you haven't been going to Ricky's every weekend since we were 10 years old. Well, yeah, kinda. What have you been doing with your life? Well, if you insist, I'm a chef. Where? He said snappily with doubt. McDougal's. Percy, you're not a chef. You're a line cook. If you don't know the difference, then you probably don't even know where you went wrong in life. I wish you all the best of luck, but don't call here again. Joey abruptly hung up. Welp, I guess I'll try Henry. Number no longer in service. I'll try Michael. Sent a voicemail. Barry was always dedicated to the cause. Let's try him. Hello? Hey Barry, it's Percy from back in the day. Oh gee, Percy. What a blast from the past. What's been up? Not a lot. I'm a chef now. Still hanging at Ricky's with Paulie. Ricky's? Yep. Oh, huh. Thought that place closed a while ago. Nope. Been going every weekend like our pact said. No. Really? Yep. See, that's why I'm calling. Ricky's is going to close if I don't come up with 50 grand for it to pass a health inspection. They're going to deem the building unsafe and close it. Can you believe that? It's insane. Yeah, actually, Percy, I can believe that. It's totally believable. Barry paused. Now, I've made a lot of money. I've done very, very well. I could just save Ricky's myself, and maybe I'll call it Barry's. Why would you do that? That was kind of my idea. Well, how about I challenge you to a battle of the skates then, Percy? Winner takes all. You know I've been skating every weekend for 45 years, right? I'd mop the fucking floor with you, Dingleberry. So, have I... Barry hung up. 5. If my life had any theme music right now, it would be Lonely Boy from the Black Keys, and I'm totally fucking dancing right now, at work. Percy! Deshawn, my manager yelled. Jesus, what? I exclaimed, taking my earbuds out. What the fuck shit are you doing, my wigger? I'm dancing, asshole. Who do you think you are, man? Deshawn scrunched his face like he was eating something sour while looking me up and down. Jim Carrey, beautiful, corny-ass wigger. The entire crew began laughing. Fuck you, Deshawn. Sorry I ain't crumping up in this bitch, I said, with a chest pop. What you think just because I'm black, that means all we know how to do is crump. Wigger, I'm classically trained. I can fondue, frappe, plie, and releve all up in your shit. Really? Yeah. Want to join my crew? What kind of crew? A roller skate crew. You know, Percy, you're a sad tale. You're a fucking loser. I'll join your crew. Really? No. Now wash some fucking dishes. Damn it, I was pissed. I walked away to wash dishes. 6. I went where I always went, when I was alone and feeling weak. Ricky's. Q. Freedom from Jimi Hendrix. I took couple laps around the rink, and power stopped in front of Paulie's DG booth. Paulie came out and joined me on the rail. I just don't know what I'm going to do. Well, what about if you let me join? Paulie, you haven't skated since you were 10, plus you fucking suck at skating. That's not true. Ever since you and your crew made your pact, I've been practicing, waiting for this exact moment. Paulie gracefully skated off into a backward grapevine. I was amazed. Paulie, where did you learn to skate like that? You're like a silky angel. I know. Paulie skated in tight figure eights, then took off around the rink twice before he toe-picked into a double axel. Holy tits! I was fired up. Paulie skated back to me. What do you say, Percy? Let me join up. I've been practicing that for 40 years. Please say yes. Paulie, you're in. I sealed with a handshake. Then I felt the hair on the back of neck snap up, the doors swinging open to 6 dicks swaggering in with blue suede tracksuits. They all had mustaches and looked oddly similar. It was Barry, as his crew. Sup, bitch boy? Barry yelped, approaching Paulie and I. Get the fuck out of here, Barry, Paulie yelled back. How about you suck my dick, faggot? Barry bolstered. If I sucked your dick, that would make you a faggot, you McFucking douchebag. No, if you sucked my dick, Barry inched nose to nose with Paulie. And I liked it. That would make me gay. Barry backed off. You're still sucking that dick, so that's gay either way, Barry retorted. He's got a point, Paulie, I said. Shut the fuck up with your mouth that smells like Paulie's sweaty nuts. Barry scolded me. Barry snapped his finger. In an instant, one of his crew members busted onto the rink and hit a triple axel. That's Jorge. He's the tits. Jorge swung around the rink and stopped next to Barry. Barry snapped his finger again. We out. Barry and his crew began to leave, filing out. Barry last. The battle is in 5 days. Better get your shit straight, pimp. And just like that, Barry's crew and Barry vanished. 7. Paulie said he always hated how cold ice rinks were, but yet had the great idea to scout at our local. It was high school hockey while we waited for beer league. We sat taking notes on players. A parent approached us very seriously. Hey, you guys scouts? What numbers are you checking out? Yeah, 13, 33, and 69, Paulie said. What team you guys with? Oh, no, we're not with any colleges or NHL teams, I answered. His tone shifted, and he got very questionable. So, what the fuck are you doing here? Looking for people to join our crew. Paulie with a smile, nodding about 7 times. What kind of crew? Like beer league? His demeanor intensified. Nope, our roller skating crew. Holy shit, you guys are the faggots from Ricky's. He turned to his buddies. These guys are trying to scout our kids to be in their homo roller skating crew. Kick their fucking ass, a person yelled from the crowd. Paulie and I took off running out of the rink, then out of the building, and hid behind an industrial 10-yard roll-off dumpster. Jesus Christ, they might kill us, Paulie whispered. We just need to explain ourselves. We're not faggots, and we're just looking for really good skaters. Well, maybe we should have waited to take notes until the beer league started, Percy. Yeah, bad optics on my part. That does look pretty shitty. A man crawled over the walls of the dumpster and dropped down like a drunken Spider-Man. He had a bushy white beard, extremely tan skin, with crow's feet and beautifully bold white veneers. Howdy, the man said. Paulie and I stared in shock. Heard you fellas were looking for some skaters. Yeah, Paulie said. Guys, it's me, Henry. Come on, you don't recognize your old hometown boy? Then it clicked for Paulie and I. It was Henry. Holy shit, Henry. What have you been doing all these years? I'm the garbage man. What do you mean? Henry said this as if we were supposed to know. Like you work for Peterson Brothers? I asked. No, silly. The rink pays me to make sure no one's garbage picking their trash. I get free ice time, man. Been skating every day for 45 years. Like the trash they throw in this dumpster? No, dude, the one over there. Paulie and I looked over at the dumpster across the parking lot. This one is my apartment. Gee, Henry, you're homeless? Paulie questioned. Homeless? I just told you, this is my apartment. Henry, we're going to head out. Show up to Ricky's 10 a.m. tomorrow for practice. Do you need a ride or anything? I asked. Nope, I have a grocery getter. You're good man. Paulie scoffed and jokingly asked, What, do they let you take the Zamboni? With a smile, Henry replied, Yep. 8. Paulie and I decided to spruce ourselves up to really sell our pitch. We dressed like we were out of Reservoir Dogs from Quentin Tarantino. Thin black ties with white dress shirts, black suit coats, and slacks. The next person that made sense to ask was MJ, the guy that dances on the corner of the street. It's rumored he makes 100 grand just dancing on the corner. We pulled up to him. Hey, MJ, we hear you do side jobs. Yeah, mitzvahs, birthday, corporate parties. 10 a.m. This address. We threw a crumpled piece of paper at him with the information and skirted off. Percy, why are you driving so fast? We gotta get this shit done, man. I'm sick of this taking so long. Call Rosalie. Paulie called Rosalie. No answer again. He left her a voicemail when and where practice was. I slowed the car down and pulled into a parking lot to call Deshawn. Deshawn didn't answer, so I left him a voicemail. Deshawn, be at Ricky's 10 a.m. tomorrow. I think your classical training is fucking bullshit. Actually, I think you are bullshit while we're at it. Be there or you're a fucking pussy faggot. I hung up. Geez, Percy, cool it. You never say things like pussy or faggot. Paulie, we need to save this rink. Paulie closed his eyes and pursed his lips like he was waiting for a kiss. Paulie, what the fuck are you doing? Paulie snapped his eyes open. Nothing. Let's go. I skirted off again, this time into the sunset. 9. It was the first practice. I walked into the locker room with Paulie. Henry and MJ were there. Henry held a one-hitter to his mouth, lit and exhaled. Something to take the edge off, Henry? Yep. Want a hit? He extended his arm with the one-hitter. I grabbed the one-hitter and took a hit, licking and smacking my lips to figure out why this cannabis tasted so different. What is this? I asked. Crack. Nice, Paulie said, unamused. Well, I'll cross that off my bucket list. Let's skate, y'all, I said. We exited the locker room and hit the rink, starting off with some laps. Deshawn walked in. Let's see what you got, Percy. You better make this shit worth my time, Deshawn yelled. I C-cut and gained speed. Toe loop to triple axel. Nailed it. Damn, Wigger! Deshawn laced up and joined the crew in practice. They lined up, towing the line. I tried to give them a pep talk, but I wasn't very good at getting the troops riled up. Then, in walked Rosalie. She was beautiful as ever. I was love-struck again. I skated to Rosalie. Rosalie, what a blast from the past. How have you been? Hey, Percy, good. I've been good. What have you been up to? I'm a journalist in New York. Oh my, that's wicked. Last I heard, you and your boyfriend jumped off a building together trying to kill yourselves. I'm so glad you're okay. Yeah, that was a weird time in my life. Rosalie became contemplative and had a 100-yard stare. A lot of LSD. Like a lot of LSD. She snapped out of it. What about you, Percy? Oh, not a lot. Just trying to save this old dump. Yeah, that's why I came. If Barry challenged you to a skate-off and you need a crew, I'm in. I fucking hate Barry. He's such a piece of fucking shit. Hey, Rosalie. Yeah? Would you want to go on a date this evening? You want me to join your crew and you expect me to go on a date with you? Yeah, sure. Why not? Maybe. We both had lovely smiles on our faces. Cue they love each other, from Jerry Garcia to what can only be called the most heartwarming montage of a group of friends refinding their love for skating. After practice was done, I walked Rosalie to her car. What do you say? Meet me at Blue Jays? Sure, Percy. I'll be there. This time, we sealed our fate with a hug. 10. Blue Jays wasn't really the best date spot. It was a sticky-floor sports bar with neon beer signs. Rosalie made it clear the second she slid onto the stool beside me. No food. If we order food, it turns romantic. Beer only. Strict policy. Copy that, I said, flagging the bartender. I ordered 2 cold, cheap draft beers. We clinked glasses. Rosalie took a long pull, drinking half her beer, wiped her lip with the back of her hand, and sighed. Barry tried to recruit me. He what? The day after you called me, he called me out of nowhere and said he wanted a female edge on his team. Then he said if he wins, he's knocking down Ricky's and building apartments. That cannot happen. I swear to God, I will chain myself to that rink like a pink-haired protester if I have to. Then we need to figure out categories. Tonight. She grabbed a napkin and pulled out a pen. Race, forward and backward, she said. Henry. Obviously, I nodded. Dude was the best power forward in Michigan. Plus, he smokes crack. Next. Duet? We looked at each other. Us? I asked. She smirked. You're damn right. Freestyle was easy. MJ, he dances for money on the street. He can roll on skates. He's practically built for this. Longest spin, she continued. Poorly, I said instantly. Dude toe picked into a double axel like some kind of low-budget Disney on Ice princess prodigy. And longest coast, she said. Deshaun, his classical training with his core strength. Balance is insane, I replied. Perfect lineup, Rosalie said, sitting back. Next practice needs to be dialed in. We have to win. I'm not letting Barry bulldoze Ricky's. We finished our beers. I walked her to her car. It was night, and the parking lot smelled like cigarettes. She stopped by her door, turned, grabbed my jacket lapel, and kissed me furiously. I froze, keeping my eyes open. She pulled back. See you at practice, Percy. She got in, shut the door aggressively. Cue roll. I'm easy from little feet. Whilst Rosalie drives off, I waved. I looked up at the night sky. A montage of my life passed before me. Toddler me dancing, kid me on stage dancing ballet, the endless nights as a teenager at Ricky's eating ice cream, laughing, smoking pot, and skating. I got in my car. I pulled out a picture of my mother. If there was anyone who could help me, it'd be you, Mum. I never knew my mother, but I felt deeply connected to her. The drive home was slow, as I passed all my hometown sentimental spots. Middle school and high school. The park I played at as a kid. My first date. The local theater. I couldn't let this dream die. 11. The next morning, I was already at Ricky's while the whole crew filed in one by one, all with a committed look on their face. Rosalie walked in last, hair tied up, with a track timer around her neck. Everyone got laced up and entered the rink. All right, Rosalie clapped sharply. No screwing around. Today, we dial in every category. Henry, you're racing. Henry rolled front and center, towed his starting position. The second he pushed off, boom, he became a missile. Forward, he skated 8.3 seconds. Backward, he skated 10 seconds flat. Jesus Christ, I muttered. He's the Jason Bourne of fucking skating. That is the fastest man I've ever seen who lives in a trash can, Paulie said, astonished. Henry gave a thumbs up and took a hit from his one-hitter. Duet was next, with Rosalie and I. Rosalie skated up beside me, confident. You ready? She asked. No, I admitted. Good, she said. Cue, I'm a man from Chicago. We started simple. Side-by-side holds, crossovers, backward grapevines, mirror turns. She grabbed my hands. We spun around together, then she whipped me into a double axel. I ate shit, my body tumbling across the floor as if I had been ejected from a merry-go-round. You okay? She asked, sounding concerning. Hard to tell. I'll let you know tomorrow. I replied, getting up. She smirked and helped me. We ran through the sequence again. Side-by-side holds, crossovers, mirror turns, spun together, and she whipped me into a double axel again. This time, I nailed it and capped it with a power slide stop. Rosalie looked at me and said, We got this. Next was MJ, Freestyle Jam. MJ glided onto the rink like he owned it. He took a deep breath. "Play my shit, Paulie." Paulie quit MJ's song, Cars from Gary Newman, and unleashed a full-body robot routine, starting with the finger tap into a shoulder click out to a robot slide. Pop, lock, glide. It was beautiful choreographed. He hit his signature moonwalk with an arm wave into a hydraulic drop. Deshaun whispered, "This dude's going to break something." MJ was in the center of the rink, molesting his hand with an infinite amount of crotch, grabbing toe-rise thrusts. "Perfect. That's enough, MJ. Next longest spin. Paulie, you're up," Rosalie said. Paulie took center rink, arms poised, his eyes shut. He pivoted, planted his toe pick, and spun, and kept spinning, and spinning, and spinning. 30 seconds turned to a minute turned to 2 minutes. "Paulie," I yelled. "Hey, yo, you alive?" He finally stopped at the 2 minutes and 13-second mark. He staggered and collapsed. "I can't feel my organs," he whispered. "Good, perfect, Paulie. Just stay there until you feel better," Rosalie said. "Next, longest coast, Deshaun." Deshaun rolled up to the starting line and stopped. He pushed off once, just once, and immediately glided, making it around the first turn and down the back straight away, slowing down at the far corner and coming to a stop. He made it 75 meters. "My guy," MJ said, excited. We all clapped. Rosalie nodded, finally satisfied. "We're there." I took a breath, exhaling. "Think we can beat Barry?" She looked at me hopefully. "We better. If he bulldozes Ricky's, that's on us." The team huddled up and we put our hands in. "For Ricky's," I said. "Yep, for Ricky's." Paulie smirked with a happy glimmer in his eye. "Let's fuck Barry up tomorrow," Deshaun exclaimed. "Yeah," Henry added proudly. MJ smiled, admiring us all around. "Let's win this," Rosalie added. 1, 2, 3, Ricky's, we yelled in unison as we broke. That was enough practice for one day. Rosalie made sure everyone knew to come with their best tricks for the trick face-off. It was our last chance to earn points, each member from the crew facing off with one member from the other crew in a judged best trick competition. 12. The angry mob from the hockey game showed up to the battle to kick our ass, but after Rosalie talked it over with them, they understood and decided to stay for the show. This was the biggest crowd Ricky's had seen in a long time. As we started warming up and practicing, the crowd began calling more people up to the rink. Me and Barry were becoming hometown legends while reminding everyone this place existed. Everyone was local. They grew up at Ricky's too. Barry's crew rolled in, wearing their matching blue suede tracksuits like they were sponsored by cocaine. The teams took their seats on the benches. The judges, 3 retirees from the local KFC, sat behind a card table with a Thanksgiving tablecloth. The first judge announced, Category 1, / backward time trial. Henry rolled up to the starting line. The whistle blew. Henry shot off like a bullet both times, 8.2 seconds forward, 10 seconds flat. Again, backward. Todd, from Barry's crew, skated 10 seconds forward, 16 seconds backward. We scored the point. It was now 1-0. The second judge announced, Category 2, duet. Barry strutted out with his partner, Kimberly. They were the prom king and queen. They did their routine. They had more lifts, spins, and aerials than ours. We did our routine and nailed what we practiced. The judges held up their scorecards. Barry smirked. We lost. It was now tied 1-1. The third judge announced Category 3, Freestyle Jam. MJ rolled out, his song cued. The crowd almost blew the roof off of the place from yelling in excitement from MJ's robot routine. Barry's freestyle guy, Beckett, crickets. We won that one, 2-1. The judges announced in unison, Category 4, Longest Spin. Paulie centered himself. Barry's spinner was Jorge. Paulie began sweating. They started spinning. Jorge looked like a tornado, but Paulie looked like a graceful hurricane. It felt like Ricky's had air conditioning for the first time in a decade. At the 90-second mark, Jorge wobbled and stopped. Paulie kept spinning. Paulie, you're good. He's out. You can stop spinning, I yelled. Paulie finally stopped at the 3-minute mark, collapsing again. It was a win for us, 3-1. The judges announced in unison, Category 5, Longest Coast. Deshaun was up and gave one push, gliding around the rink, going 80 meters this time. Barry's guy, Donnie, went a measly 44 meters. We won the point, 4-1. Barry scowled and yelled from his bench, "This ain't over, bitch boys." The judges announced in unison, Trick face-off, these matchups will be chosen at random. This was where the score could swing. Winner of each face-off gets a point. Face-off 1, Henry versus Todd. Todd hit a barrel roll to a toe spin finish. Henry didn't even go. He was incapable of doing anything other than skating fast. Loss, 4-2. Face-off 2, Rosalie versus Kimberly. Kimberly hit a heel-to-toe, glide into a shoot-the-duck. Rosalie did a traveling spin. Rosalie was smooth, but Kimberly won. Loss, 4-3. Face-off 3, me versus Beckett. Beckett toe-picked into a double twist. I did a side glide into backward transition and went backward grapevines into a crazy legs ending with a power stop. I nailed it. Win, 5-3. Face-off 4, Deshaun versus Donnie. Donnie did a 1-foot coast, overhead arm loop into a spread eagle backbend coast. Deshaun got cocky and tried to top Donnie's routine by doing the same exact thing. Except on the backbend coast, Deshaun lost his balance and bailed, hitting the hardwood. Loss, 5-4. Face-off 5, MJ versus Jorge. Jorge spun, popped, and heel glided into a traveling spin, ending with a barrel roll to toe spin, then striking a pose on a power stop. Jorge absolutely crushed it. MJ did his robot routine. He was a one-trick pony. Loss, 5-5. Tied. There was tension. The audience was screaming like they had money on the line. Barry stepped forward, pointed at Paulie. Final round. You and me. One trick. Winner takes all. You ready, faggot? Watch this. Paulie nodded viciously with a look of disgust on his face. Final round. Paulie versus Barry. Barry went first. He launched into a flying camel spin, transitioned into a double leg cross, and finished with a cartwheel dismount that made the crowd erupt. He rolled back to the benches. Beat that. Paulie rolled forward slowly. He knew it was his moment. Vignaraja from Amjad Ali Khan began playing. He moved like an avant-garde flower blowing in the wind. I never knew Paulie could interpretive dance. He shoved off, gliding, toe pick, triple axel into a traveling spin across half the rink. Knee slide that transitioned into a back lean spin. Then he popped up and finished with a perfectly balanced angel pose. Silence. More silence. The crowd went crazy. Cue urethane from Fu Manchu. Scorecards went up perfect 10 all around. Barry's face dropped and he exploded, beating the shit out of the drywall behind him. We won, 6-5. It was over. We saved Ricky's. Rosalie hugged me. I'm writing about this, she said. All of it. The rink, the crew, you. People need to know what happened here. She kissed me. This time, I was ready. Henry cried on MJ's shoulder. Deshaun shouted, "Fuck you, Barry." Barry stormed out, yelling something about lawsuits. It didn't matter. For the first time in my lifetime, I felt like the universe finally handed me a win. 13. 6 months later. Rosalie kept her word. Good thing she did, because her article exploded. A Dying Art and Perseverance by Rosalie Bauer. It went viral. People drove in from towns we'd never heard of, from other counties. 2 ladies flew in from Florida just to see the legendary mark on the floor where Paulie spun for 3 minutes straight. In 1 month, Ricky's made enough money to start renovations. Fresh floors, new rails, a working HVAC system, LED lights, a DJ booth that didn't shock Paulie every time he put the microphone up to his mouth. And the crown jewel, a liquor license. Ricky's wasn't just a rink anymore. It was a local hotspot. Families came during the day. Adults packed the place at night. Kids rediscovered skating. Old-timers came out of retirement. The place was alive with a spirit it hadn't had since disco. And my dream, the one everyone laughed at, came true. Ricky's was the roller bar. Beer taps along the back wall, neon lights, cocktails, and a happy hour that always had a line out the door. People loved it. I decided to keep the name, Ricky's, because, well, the memories, and not just mine, everybody else's. I stood behind the counter one night, drying glasses, watching a packed rink full of people dancing, gliding, living. I realized something important. I didn't just save Ricky's. I helped bring roller skating back to life for many people, and for once, I understood the meaning of perseverance. So, if this part of my life had any exit music, it would be Fool Yourself from Little Feat. A Detroit Narrow. Jack Robert. This book is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events or locales is entirely coincidental. Note, a memory from Hancock. I often find myself reflecting on moments of subtle impact. One memory that lingers is from my time living on a narrow street in Detroit. It wasn't much of a street, though, just patchwork potholes and cracked sidewalks. But it was mine. The people there were friendly, but they were clueless and socially awkward enough to make you feel like they could be arrogant. The Exodus and Packnow. The Pacific Northwest has always been a breeding ground for rebellion, a place where the trees grow taller than skyscrapers and the air tastes like freedom. It was here that the Exodus began, a grassroots movement born out of disillusionment and desperation. As the urban sprawl swallowed cities whole, paving over gardens and drowning out local communities with the deafening roar of corporate ambition, people started to flee. They weren't hippies or idealists, not all of them. They were just tired. Tired of working for scraps, tired of living someone else's dream. At first, the Exodus was a whisper. Farmers and carpenters, teachers and artists, all packing up their lives and heading west to escape the suffocating grip of the sprawl. They built communes in the woods, self-sustaining utopias governed by their own rules. To outsiders, they were anarchists. To insiders, they were pioneers. But nothing pure lasts for long. Packnow, the Pacific Northwest Cooperative, rose from the ashes of this movement, promising unity and order. What began as a coalition of free thinkers quickly morphed into something darker. Packnow wasn't just a collective, it was a corporation in disguise, a machine with its gears greased by mob money and old-world power. They saw the Exodus not as a revolution, but as an opportunity. James Leonard, Detroit's very own kingpin, was one of Packnow's quiet architects. His vision was simple: herd the dreamers into one place, monopolize their idealism, and turn their freedom into profit. Drugs, labor, land, it all flowed back to him. Leonard didn't see people. He saw assets and liabilities. The Exodus had become a myth, a bedtime story for those who stayed behind in the cities. They're living off the land, some said. They're building a better world. But the truth was far grittier. Packnow thrived on the backs of those who believed in it. And those who didn't? They vanished into the fog, swallowed by the very forests they sought refuge in. Detroit was the perfect breeding ground for Leonard's schemes. It was here that his empire of deceit intersected with the lives of people like Howard Novak and Stu Novak. And it was here that the delicate threads of conspiracy, loyalty, and betrayal began to weave a tapestry so dark it threatened to engulf everyone caught in its grasp. This is the report of how dreams turn to dust, how revolution is bought and sold, and how, in the end, no one truly escapes, not even those who thought they already had. Chapter 1. Penny's backstory. My father, being the police chief of Detroit, never helped much, always being told how to live and what to do. He never even took the time to get to know me, and wonders why I didn't ever want to be around him. All these idealistic ways of life and societal standards, I thought it was all bullshit. I wanted to live life on my own terms. He wore that badge like his gun, but I knew it wasn't the honor of being on the force keeping him clean. It was fear. Fear that if he ever took the badge off, he'd be a beatnik junkie again, yelling his Kerouac rip-off poetry from his soapbox in Eastern Market. I remember sitting in the living room, listening to him brag about cleaning himself up, then the city, but all I saw was a man addicted to control. I left when I was 17, and it was 1959. Took his spare revolver, a few case files of people he doxed that left for Packnow, and a bus ticket west. Seattle was where I met the first wave of the Exodus. They weren't perfect, but they made sense. People who'd had enough of everything and wanted nothing but quiet. I cooked for them, cleaned for them. Then Packnow came in and turned the dream into a factory. That's when I learned every movement becomes a business. That's why I swore to take down James Leonard and steal his fortune. When I came back to Detroit in 1971, I was 29. I was different. I was learned. Chapter 2. Bigsby Anderson, August 14th, 71. 10:27 a.m. He was a stale-smelling, long-haired private detective. He took a drag of his cigarette and exhaled as he sat in the booth behind me. Howard Novak, honestly, I can't tell if he's rotting or if he just hasn't showered in weeks. What I do know, he's working a case. A stabbing that presumably took the life of his cousin, Stu Novak. Howard took a long look at his case file, put his cigarette out in the ashtray, and left a $5 for the waitress. I slid my notepad into my pocket and followed Howard from a distance as he walked down 3rd Street to the scene of the crime. Howard hasn't done detective work since the Exodus case went cold. That case wrecked him. It was the peak of revolution. Everyone was fleeing, the urban sprawl for the Pacific Northwest, trying to find some kind of peace. Howard, fresh out of Vietnam, had landed a detective job with the Detroit Police Department. Apparently, Howard had been discharged from the Army for being bi-curious, or something like that, even though he truly wasn't. But who cares? Me? I don't give a shit. I'm a washed-up private investigator. My wife divorced me, took the kids, and left me with nothing. I barely even know who I am half the time. They don't have shit like this happening in Portland, Maine. I'm out of my element, but I'm strapped for cash. As multiple reports have mentioned, Howard got the Exodus case of the missing girl and tried everything to find her, blah blah blah. That case went cold, and it broke him. I lit a cigarette and watched as Howard stepped into a small dive bar called Leonard's. I lingered outside for a moment and caught sight of Pauline, a woman I was familiar with, walking right by me down the alley. "Hey, Pauline," I said pleasantly. "Leave me alone, Biggs. I don't know how many times I have to tell you, I'm not a prostitute nor interested in your little prick." "Pauline, you are a prostitute, and that's okay. There's no shame in sex work, hun. Do what you gotta do." "I don't know why you didn't return my call, though," I said offhandedly. "Because, Bigsby, this would never work out. You're a fucking narc." "Hey, I'd give it all up for you. I'd even get you a job working the front desk at the station. I don't wank with one hand and point with the other. But listen, what do you know about what happened here? You hear anything on the streets?" "You're a fucking idiot. I don't know shit about this or that, Biggs. All I know is those Leonard fucks have a lot of drugs in there, and that's all I know. So kindly, fuck off." Pauline spun on her heel and walked off, probably to tell her pimp I was harassing her. She wasn't wrong. I am a fucking idiot. A tall, blue-eyed Scottish idiot. I walked into the bar to see if I could overhear anything. Howard has never met me, so there's no way he knows I'm following him. Plus, he's been hitting the bottle hard. The guy probably couldn't recognize his own father. I took a seat at a stool, close enough to hear, but not close enough to tip off Howard, who was interviewing the bar owner, Theo, near the pool table. Theo was a tall, thin man with a handlebar mustache and a history of growing marijuana in the back room of the bar. "So, you're telling me you heard no struggle?" Howard spoke softly. "No, man. There was a lady outside smoking who saw someone in the parking lot and reported it to our bartender, Lyle. I told everything to the DPD. It should be in your report, man." "I'm just going through the motions, man," Howard said sarcastically, pulling his pants up, even though they didn't need adjusting. He moved like a 29-year-old trying to imitate a 65-year-old. "You mind if I have a talk with Lyle?" "Be my guest. Ain't nothing stopping you," Theo said smugly. What an asshole. He sits there with a pool stick in one hand, acting like he's God's gift to mobbing. A swinging 60s prick who probably snorts more coke than his nose can handle. Howard better not fall for this guy's shit. Howard took a seat at the bar, one stool away from me, to talk to Lyle. "You still growing?" Howard asked, keeping his dark sunglasses on. "No." "What the fuck does that have anything to do with it?" "Nothing," Howard said with a shrug, looking around like he owned the place. "Let me get a double Jameson, with ice and a dash of ginger ale." Howard's attitude shifted. He smacked the bar and said aggressively, "A fucking dash." Then he turned to me and smiled, laughing. "These fucking people, man." He grabbed Lyle by the tie and slammed his head onto the bar, making the glasses and silverware rattle. "Tell me who the fuck killed him, motherfucker." I told you, Howard. I have no idea. I told you everything." Lyle pissed himself, and Howard let him go, pacing back and forth before letting out a sigh of disappointment. Theo stepped in and pulled Howard up to the lofted offices overlooking the bar. 10 minutes later, Howard came back down and took his seat at the bar. Lyle served him his drink, double Jameson with a dash of ginger ale. Just a dash. "Listen, a girl came in and told me she found a body outside. We called the cops, but, I am a little suspicious about that girl, Lyle said. And why's that? Howard asked. Lewis, the barback, interrupted as he refilled the Miller cans. "'Cause that girl didn't seem fazed at all by the dead body," Lewis said. "And who are you?" "I'm Lewis, his twin brother." "Ah, twins. God couldn't have just one, so he gave your parents two of you." "Yeah, something like that, man," Louis replied. Howard mocked him. "Yeah, something like that. Shut the fuck up." Louis probably wondered how Howard couldn't tell they were twins. The guy's alcoholism was either impressive or tragic, maybe both. Howard slammed his drink, muttered, "Have a good one, boys," and walked out. Chapter 3. Perry's on Ferry. August 13th, 71. 12:57 a.m. The diner always smelled like shit. Perry's on Ferry is the epitome of dining in an ashtray. Neon flickered in the window like a strobe. I wiped the counter, watching Kit stir her cup of tea as if it had the answers. "Stop," I said. "Stop what?" "Pretending you're calm." Kit rolled her eyes. "You called me here for a reason, Penny. Let's get to it." I poured myself a cup of coffee, black. "You ever hear of a man named Stu Novak?" Kit shook her head. "No. Should I have?" "Not yet," I told her. "He's important. James Leonard kind of important. I've got a source in Packnow who says the guy is tied to something bigger than he knows." Kit was confused. "I don't follow." I took a sip and let the silence linger. "What matters is, he's in the way, potentially. If my sources are true, Stu's the only one who could screw that inheritance exchange for everyone involved, including us." I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "Ron Tanther's handling the fortune exchange. That's Leonard's lawyer. He's supposed to meet Stu soon to make it official. Once that happens, the money moves, and Packnow loses leverage. That can't happen." Kit lifted her cigarette to her mouth. "And what exactly are we supposed to do about that?" "You're supposed to do what you're good at," I said. "He's a regular here, comes in for his Rolling Rocks, and if he's sad, an Earl Grey. You talk to him, get close, and that's that." "You're serious?" Kit asked. "As serious as a dog shitting on your brand new carpet." "You said Packnow wanted intel, not murder." "Packnow wants control, sweetheart. Intel just keeps the hands clean." "You ever think we're just becoming the same thing we're trying to take out?" Kit asked. "All the time," I said. "But at least we get control." The clock above the bar ticked toward 1 in the morning. The regulars were gone, leaving just the hum of the coolers and breeze of the ceiling fans. "And if it goes wrong?" Penny asked. "It won't." "But if it does?" I looked at her. "Then you run for Seattle, and you never say my name again." She stood, slipping on her coat, fixing her hair. "You know, Penny, for someone who hates control, you sure love pulling strings." I lit a cigarette, drew the smoke in deep, and smiled. "Good luck, kitty doll." Then the shopkeeper's bell jingled, and there he was, Stu Novak. Kit froze, cigarette halfway to her lips, eyes wide, and her jaw nearly on the floor. I shot Kit a look to step outside. Chapter 4. Howard Novak. August 14th, 71. 11:02 a.m. "Have a good one, boys," I said, leaving Leonard's bar. My next interview was with Hitch. DPD uses him as an ear-to-ground surveillance guy. Hitch sees everything with his whiskey-stained breath. I found him at the corner of 3rd and Forest, begging for change, his thin frame draped in a patchwork coat that could tell its own tales. "You Hitch?" "Yeah, what's it to you?" "Some say you see everything." Some say you saw who stabbed Stu Novak. Yeah, I saw it, but I ain't telling you shit, man. I pulled out a bag of pussy cushion, the Leonard's signature cannabis, and dropped it into Hitch's rusted coffee can. Now, about that stabbing. Hitch's eyes lit up like a desperate man who'd just stumbled upon a whorehouse. I saw the guy or girl, but I couldn't make out their face. They had a hood on. That's when I ran, because I'm scared of you guys. You guys? Yeah, you cops. I'm not a cop anymore, Hitch. I turned and walked away. Hey man, I recognize you. You're the guy who couldn't find that missing girl. I kept walking, my jaw clenched. Fucking asshole. I made it back to my AMC Pacer, the metallic lime green paint chipped and flaking like my sense of self-respect. I headed out to interview the girl in the report who witnessed the murder, Kit Pooley, a suburbanite with a flair for the dramatic. Or so I'd been told. Kit lived in St. Clair Shores, a place I knew well. Those were simpler times, before the war, before the pain of losing my father and my mother to forces beyond my control. Before Stu, who was more like a brother than a cousin, had taken over the social club, the bar our fathers built from nothing. What are the odds? 2 fathers dead in the war, 2 mothers gone at childbirth. Stu and I were brothers in grief before anything else. And now he was gone too. I pulled up to the white bungalow of Kit Pooley. I knocked on the door. No answer. I waited and knocked again. Who is it? A charming feminine voice floated through the door. Ma'am, I'm Howard Novak, private detective here to interview you about the Stu Novak murder. Is now a good time? The door creaked open, and there she stood. Yes, officer, come on in. Miss, I'd like to let you know I am not an officer of the law. I'm a private detective. Oh, my mistake. Come in. Sit. I sat on the love seat across from Kit. She had short black hair, cut into a bob with sharp bangs that framed her delicate face. She wore a grey crew-neck sweater and baby blue bell-bottom jeans that looked like they'd been tailored just for her. I was nervous. Pretty women always made me nervous, and it didn't help that I hadn't spoken to one in months. My lack of sobriety didn't help either. Forgive me, this'll only take a moment. Can you tell me what happened that night? Yes, I was outside, having a cigarette, when I looked out and saw a man lying dead in the parking lot. So I ran inside and told the bartender. Then I left to gather my thoughts. Death is such an awful thing. And what were you doing all the way in the Cass corridor? Well, she hesitated, her chin lowering to her chest as she poked her shoulder out at me in some kind of coquettish pose. The hipsters are calling it Mito now, short for Midtown. Isn't that totally groovy? She said, with a forced smile, like she was auditioning for a role she didn't quite fit. Gee, I had no idea, I said, scratching my head. So, what were you doing in Mito? I asked again, more firmly. I like to get out to the city. It's lovely down there. Is it wrong for a second-wave feminist to go down to the dirty city? Do I need a man to hold my hand everywhere I go? Oh, are you going to commit me to the mental hospital for voting Liberal? Miss, no. Listen, that's not what I was suggesting. I leaned in, lowering my voice. Technically, my sexuality doesn't fit the ideology of the United States military. That's why I got discharged from the service. So technically, I'm a deserter because, well, I lied to get out of going to war. Her eyebrow arched sharply. Are you trying to compare deserting the military to years of oppression? A white male telling me we're the same because he lied about his sexuality to get further in life. Okay, moving on. And what do you do for a living, Miss Pooley? I'm a maid for the recently deceased James Leonard. I know, I'm really sticking it to the man, Kit replied. The James Leonard? Yes, sir. James Leonard. I paused. The name was familiar, a tickling whisper in the back of my mind. All right. Well, that'll be all. Thank you. I stood up and walked to the door. Okay, let me know if they find anything. I'll be here, Kit said. I pulled out my notepad and scribbled down my address. I don't have a phone, so if you think of anything, write me a letter or stop by. Okay, sure thing, Howard, Kit said, smiling softly. I left and, with a sigh of relief, climbed into my pacer. I was sweating. I made my way back to my apartment in… Meet, oh God, that name doesn't roll off the tongue. I set my corduroy jacket on my recliner and sat down. I lit my joint and toked it until I was sedated enough to fall asleep, without thinking about the tangled mess this case was becoming. The missing girl case had driven me out of my job, out of my mind. I'm still trying to forget it. But maybe, just maybe, solving this case would redeem me, prove to everyone I could still be successful in private practice. Before I knew it, the floor fell away into darkness, and I became one with my couch. The ceiling dissolved into thick black clouds of anguish and paranoia. I sat up, grabbed my notepad, and wrote, "Incubated lust, as the times drift on. Felicitous to nature as the sun meets dawn. Lay me to rest as new journeys unfold. Lay me to rest with no one untold. Things left behind, I hope remain timeless. Wishing for love when I start to turn lifeless." Chapter 5. Kit Pooley, August 15th, 71. 5:59 a.m. I got up early the next morning after Howard visited me. I'd spent the whole night stewing, trying to ignore the guilt clawing its way up my spine like a persistent beggar. The truth was simple, yet impossible to face. How could Howard Novak miss that James Leonard's son was Theo Leonard? Howard was messy and broken. Then again, what could I expect from a man who slicks back his hair and reeks of regret? I brushed my hair methodically, each stroke an attempt to smooth over the knots of my thoughts. My reflection in the mirror glared back at me, judging, mocking. I didn't wear much makeup anymore, not since Mrs. Leonard called me a whore. That venomous word still hissed in my ears, even though the old bat had been 6 feet under for over a year now. She'd accused me of sleeping with James Leonard, but of course, I hadn't. That's just the story I had to stick to. I lit a cigarette, its cherry flaring in the dim light of my kitchen. The phone rang. I didn't have to check to know it was Penny. "Penny," I said flatly, dragging on my smoke. "Good morning, love. How are we today?" "Fine. I'd rather not talk about it on the phone, though." "That's okay, Kitty. Stu is gone, right?" "Yes. And Mr. Leonard was last week." "Yes, Penny. Trust me. Mr. Leonard looked like natural causes. No one is going to put together that I stabbed Stu Novak, or even the fact of why he was at Leonard's bar in the first place." "If you say so. We need that letter too, Kitty doll. Ron said it's in the hutch of Mr. Leonard's office. Can you get access to the place while they're still cleaning out the estate?" "Yes, that shouldn't be a problem. One last thing, Penny. How accurate is your source? Is it really worth 16 million? "Kit, my source is reliable. James Leonard was close to him, and he knew a lot about criminals. If you say it's good, I'll trust you." "'Kay, Kitty, I'll be off work soon. See you then." "Bye, Penny." I slammed the receiver down and exhaled, the weight of the conversation pressing down on me like how my father would press my mother up against the wall when he'd come home from drinking. And it wasn't the flirtatious kind. I hated Penny. This was all her fault anyway. One day, she's some bohemian dreamer in the Exodus, and the next, she's plotting murder to take over Pack Now. I grabbed my keys and left for Howard's. Maybe I could throw him just enough breadcrumbs to get him sniffing in the right direction. Let him bust Penny, let him clean up this mess, and I could finally claw my way out of this white-collar hell. Howard's apartment was above a sub shop. As I parked in the alley, I couldn't help but wonder if he ate there. If you lived above a sub shop, would you? The thought nauseated me. I always hated subs. Who even regulates that? The FDA? The USDA? My head buzzed with pointless questions as I climbed the narrow staircase to his door. I knocked. "Howard!" I heard him shuffle toward the door, muttering under his breath. He swung it open, his hair disheveled, his shirt rumpled like he'd slept in it, or hadn't slept at all. He looked awful. Worse than before. He'd cut his long hair into something he could part down the middle, an effort to look dapper, I suppose. The long sideburns trailing down to his jawline didn't help. "Kit, what are you doing here?" he mumbled, his voice groggy. "Howard, we need to talk." I pushed past him and sat on the couch. "As you know, Mr. Leonard died last week. He left his whole estate and everything to his son." "Yeah, his son Theo. I figured that out last night when I was, dreaming." Howard cleaned up his space, shoving needles and paraphernalia into a cigar box. "You mean getting high?" He stopped, squaring his shoulders. "Absolutely not. That would be completely unprofessional," he said, deadpan. "Howard." "What?" "Ugh, never mind. We have shit to do. James Leonard's fortune, it wasn't left to Theo. It was left to another son no one knows about." "Okay? And who's that other son?" "I just said, no one knows." Howard started pacing, scratching his head like a dog with fleas. "Well, we gotta find that son, huh? Let's get to it. Tell me everything you know." I told him what I could, without implicating Penny. About the letter meant for Theo explaining the situation. About the lockbox still at the estate, holding the truth, that damned letter. When we finished our coffee and cigarettes, I left to retrieve the lockbox. Grosse Pointe was a sterile suburb, filled with mobsters playing dress-up as respectable citizens. Fancy cars, fancy houses, and skeletons in every closet. Cindy, a friend of mine, let me into the Leonard mansion. I told her I just needed to grab some things from my locker. Cindy was stealing the .999 pure silver eating utensils to sell to feed her 3 kids. I snooped in James Leonard's office. I found the lockbox in a tall oak china hutch. I didn't have time to search for the key. I stuffed the lockbox into my crocheted tote bag and bolted. Back at the car, Howard was slumped in the passenger seat, asleep. "I got it," I said, yanking the door open. "You did?" he said, sarcastic enthusiasm dripping from his voice. "Yes, I did." I handed him the bag. He fiddled with the lock. "You don't have the key, Kit?" "No, I don't have the key, Howard. I didn't have time. My friend lives up the road. He can crack it open." "Let's go then." "Fucking Christ, Kit. Let's get the shit we gotta do done." Do done. That's funny sounding, you know." I stared at him, wondering how one man could be so clueless and yet so oddly charming. We dropped the lockbox off at my friend's place and agreed to pick it up later. Howard, emboldened by who knows what, worked up the nerve to ask me out to dinner. We ended up at the Bronx Bar, a dive with a good jukebox and better burgers. Howard ordered 2 Rolling Rocks and 2 burgers, chatting up the bartender like they were old war buddies. "I love these guys, this band. You know," he said, as the jukebox blared some rock and roll track. "No, I don't know, Howard." "Okay, I like to hear myself talk." "Boy, yes you do. Tell me about you, Kit. Where you from?" "Oh, let's not do this, Howard. Can't we just listen to the music? Besides, the best ship isn't always friendship. Sometimes it's the cigarette boat taking you to Cuba." He laughed, the sound rumbling low in his chest, and for a brief moment I wondered if I could trust him, if I could trust anyone. Before I knew it, he stood up and began dancing to the band he loved. I began to admire his looseness. Chapter 6. Bigsby's Epiphany, August 16th, 71. 9:20 a.m. Once Kit left Howard's, he made his way to her friend's house to retrieve the lockbox himself. Why Howard felt the need to play Lone Ranger was beyond me, but he did. I watched as he took a scroll out of the lockbox. It was the Leonard memoir, a memoir that documented the paternal lineage of the Leonard family. Howard read the Leonard memoir in his car. I could see through my monocular that he was not happy. James Leonard was the biggest drug trafficker, turning everyday people into drug addicts, so they'd be willing to join the exodus to pack now. James Leonard believed the exodus would drive free thinkers into one composite place that he and his buddies could monopolize. Howard was on his way to confront the men who killed his cousin. I tailed him, watching as he slipped into Leonard's bar like a shadow. I followed, my steps deliberate. Howard didn't even notice me as he climbed the stairs to Theo Leonard's office. "Howard," I hissed in a whisper, trying not to alert anyone else. He spun around, startled. "Who the fuck?" "Recently divorced private detective from Portland, Maine. Call me Bigsby. Detroit wanted me to keep an eye on you. Don't go in there alone." I crept up the stairs toward him. "Well, that's a fucking mouthful, Bigsby. Back up is back up, I guess. Fucker. Get ready." "Wait, Howard. You need to know something first. Stu was James Leonard's son. The Novaks took him in." Howard froze. For a moment, the air grew so still, it felt like even the cockroaches were holding their breath. "Motherfucker, I know. Stu's mother was James Leonard's ex-wife. She never told James Leonard she was pregnant until later. My uncle believed it was his. Stu, he's Leonard's firstborn." "Well, never mind then. Let's get on with it." We continued up the stairs. Inside Theo's office, Theo and the twins, Louis and Lyle, were waiting, their faces a mix of irritation and thinly veiled panic. "Hey, boys," and not in the fun way Theo is thinking about, Howard said, leveling his gun at them. "The fuck does that mean?" Theo growled. It means fuck you," Howard stammered, his ADD clearly kicking in at the wrong moment. "Fuck, we're toasted," Lyle muttered, his voice trembling. "Yeah, well, how's it going?" Howard said, his tone suddenly sharp. "Howard, get on with it. Don't get fucking distracted," I barked, trying to keep him on track. "Anyway, a DD again. So, that's fucked up. And I'd bet you killed Hitch too. He was pretty cool. For a guy who never did nothing wrong, y'all gotta go and do that." "Haha, yeah, we did," Louis said, laughing. "Shut the fuck up, Louis," Theo snapped, twisting his ridiculous handlebar mustache like some cartoon villain. Before anyone could react further, Theo yanked a sawed-off shotgun from under his desk and fired at Howard. The blast hit Howard square in the stomach, throwing him against the wall. "Howard," I yelled, drawing my own gun. I didn't think, I just fired. My shot tore through Theo's jugular, spraying blood across the office. I wish I blew that stupid fucking mustache off, I snarled. Theo, clutching his neck, turned to Lyle for help. But before Lyle could react, Louis pulled his own gun and finished Theo off. "Louis, what the fuck?" Lyle screamed. "Fuck him. This is bullshit," Louis yelled back, his face contorted in rage. The tension broke as both brothers turned their guns on each other, firing simultaneously. The room erupted in a deafening crack. Both fell, their lifeless bodies crumpling to the floor, each with a bullet between the eyes. Kit burst into the room, her face pale and panicked. "For fuck's sake," I muttered under my breath. She rushed to Howard, who was slumped against the wall. A phone book, a frying pan, and a copy of Catcher in the Rye spilled from under his shirt. "Howard, your thing worked," Kit stammered, her voice shaky with disbelief. "Yeah, I guess it did," Howard groaned, stretching and grunting as if he'd just woken from a nap. "Get him out of here, Kit. I'll clean this up," I said firmly. Who are—" "No one," Howard cut her off, waving a dismissive hand. Kit helped Howard to his feet and dragged him out of the bar. They climbed into her car and sped off, leaving me to deal with the mess. I grabbed the phone from Theo's desk and called the captain. He wasn't happy, but we cleaned up the scene and returned to the station. I sat at my desk, hoping for a moment of peace to let my thoughts settle. But of course, the captain poked his head into my office. "Anderson, is that case file on Novak written up?" "Not yet. I got a lead on this Kit girl involved in the case. Got her on a bug talking to a girl named Penny, admitting to the Stu Novak stabbing. I looked her up. She's tied to the Packnow cult out in the Pacific Northwest." The captain stiffened, his face darkening. "Packnow is organized," he muttered. "Not like those hippie squatters from the Exodus. They're dangerous." "How come you know so much about the Pacific Northwest?" I asked, sensing something deeper. The captain hesitated. "I lost my daughter to the Exodus." "Yeah, and it's too bad he couldn't find her," he added bitterly. "Who couldn't find your daughter?" "Howard fucking Novak." I stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. "I had no idea Howard was assigned to your daughter's case. It wasn't exactly the missing persons case it was made out to be. She chose to join the Exodus, took all the silverware, all my investigation files on them, and my .45 the night she left." As the captain left, something clicked. I bolted from my desk, racing down the hall. "Where's Chief?" "He left," someone called. I found him in the lobby, sipping coffee and chatting with the new receptionist, Pauline. "Chief," I shouted out of breath. "What is it now, Anderson?" "Kit Pooley has a partner she's working with, Penny, who is the same age as your daughter and left for Seattle the same year your daughter did." "How do you know this?" Chief Lane snapped. "It was all on the bug I put in Kit's home phone. I also overheard them plotting something at Perry's on Ferry while I was there for an Earl Grey, but it was all too vague, and I wasn't there working. I was just there taking my mind off things, you know? I get lonely often. Gets weird when your wife and kids leave you. I'm unfamiliar with Detroit, so I try to get out and see the town. I wish—" Chief Lane's face was in disbelief, interrupting me. "Christ on the cross, Bigsby. Shut the fuck up. You cry more than my dog needing to go outside so he doesn't shit on my new carpet again." "Sorry, Chief. I didn't mean to trauma dump on you." "Howard is a loose end, Bigsby. Find Kit and Penny and make sure that money doesn't get to the West Coast." The phone rang. Pauline answered, her face growing pale. "It's Hutzel. Stu Novak is alive and missing." Chief Lane and I exchanged a look. "He's got to be going for Kit," I said. Go, Chief barked. I'll get a team ready. Chapter 7. Stu Novak, August 13th, 71. 12:50 a.m. Fuck, it was cold. I was leaving a meeting with Ron Tanther, that scum-sucking lawyer for the other scum-sucker, James Leonard. North on Cass, past the Thompson house, I decided to walk by the big clock tower and head to my favorite bar, besides my own, on Ferry. I passed Howard's place on Hancock, and sure, I could have stopped in, said hello, but it didn't seem right to break the news to him just yet. The news? Well, here it is. I inherited James Leonard's fortune, $16 million. Turns out, after my mother divorced James Leonard and married my dad, she was pregnant with me. Whatever, 16 million bucks. That kind of cash could turn the social club into a real joint. Pool tables, maybe hire some help. Hell, I've always wanted to see Paris, sit in some smoky cafe and write some nonsensical poetry. Maybe pretentious nonsense no one would read, but still, my nonsense. I never realized how much 16 million weighed. A big leather tote filled with cash in a city now being called Mito, of all goddamn things. Who would have thought it? Not me. Maybe I should have stopped at Howard's. Too late now. I opened the door to Perry's on Ferry, which was across the street from Leonard's bar. I held the door open as a sad, lonely man, with tears in his eyes, was just leaving. My favorite new waitress was there to greet me. "Hey, Penny, how's it hanging, my love?" "Good, Stu. And can you please not ask me how it's hanging? It implies I have a penis." "My sincerest apologies, Penny. I'll proceed to be a gentleman for you." "Well, you're in a chipper mood. How's it hanging with you?" I leaned in, whispering like a conspirator. "Come here." Penny tilted her head, playing along, but I could tell she was amused. She was the kind of free spirit you could imagine running off to join the Exodus. New in town, mysterious, and just grounded enough to make you wonder why she stuck around. But still, something told me not to trust her completely. "I'd like a Rolling Rock, please," I whispered, letting the moment drag a little longer. She pulled back and chuckled. "All right, Stu. Coming right up," she said, her smirk curling like smoke of a cigarette. I watched her work. I was thinking about the absurdity of it all. 16 million in my bag, and all I could think about was how to give it away. Donate it, maybe. Or run off, disappear, live like someone else for once. Maybe I'd finally join the Exodus myself. I pondered my life over a couple of beers. "All right. Closing time, Stu. Last round?" Penny asked, snapping me out of my spiral. "No, that's fine. Earl Grey for the road." "You and this Earl Grey, Stu. Sheesh." "Kidding, Penny. Next time, gotta see a man about a horse." I stood up, adjusting the tote on my shoulder. I glanced back and waved goodbye. The girl with short black hair was standing outside. I lit a cigarette before I crossed the street, but was stopped by my interest in the black-haired girl. I looked behind myself. "Need help with that?" "Yeah, thanks. Matches don't do too well in the wind," she said, handing me her cigarette. "No problem at all," I said, fishing out my Zippo. "By the way, I'm Stu." I lit her cigarette. She hesitated, then smiled shyly. "Kit. I'm Kit." "Nice to meet you, Kit. Sorry, I don't usually light strangers' cigarettes. Is this too much conversation?" "Not at all. How do you know Penny?" "Well, she serves me drinks when it's after dark." "Where you heading?" she asked, tilting her head in that curious way people do when they want something. "Off to see a man about a horse at Leonard's. Let me walk you across the street." We crossed together, chatting lightly until we reached Leonard's. I paused at the corner, saying goodbye, but she lingered. Hey, are you going to Leonard's back room for roulette? I like roulette. Can I come? She asked. Indeed I am, Kit. I don't like roulette. I love roulette, I replied. Well, if you love roulette, wait till you see what's next. Before I could process what she meant, there was a sharp, searing pain in my stomach. I looked down and saw her hand gripping a dagger buried deep in me. Yeah, sorry, Stu, Kit said, her voice devoid of any warmth. I stumbled, my vision trailing. She yanked the knife out, and I caught a glimpse of the blade, 7 inches at least. I hit the pavement hard. Through the haze of pain, I saw her grab the tote off my shoulder and run into Leonard's. A homeless man in the distance bolted. I tried to call out, but my voice cracked and faded. The dizziness took over. Blackouts came in waves, and then nothing. I woke to a nurse changing my IV bags. What day is it? I groaned. August 15th, she said. Try not to worry. The medication will help with the pain. I drifted off again, the fog of medication pulling me into strange, half-formed thoughts. The Earth, is it flat? Could there really be a coup of progressives out in the Pacific Northwest? I couldn't stop thinking about the Exodus, how they'd risen against the corporate sprawl, rejecting the urban cages and planting their roots in freedom. A generation of doers, breaking away from the monotony of someone else's system. The world outside began to forge again. I forced my eyes open. How bad is it? I asked the nurse. It went deep, but didn't puncture anything vital. We cleaned the wound and sutured you up. Okay, listen. I'm all good on the funky stuff you're giving me. Bad mojo filter, you know? I'll handle it. If you say you're not in pain, we'll save it, she replied. Thanks. By the way, how long was I out? Just another day. It's the 16th. She left, and I sat on the edge of the bed, breathing deeply. In and out. In and out. My legs felt like rubber, but I forced myself up and dressed in the bathroom. Thankfully, my face hadn't taken a beating, and I managed to slip out of the hospital unnoticed. Leaving Hutzel, all I could think about was getting to Howard. If anyone could solve this mess, it'd be him. Chapter 8. Bigsby Anderson, August 16th, 71. 10:47 p.m. The night was hot and humid. I was in Howard's alley, cigarette in hand, eavesdropping through a cracked, ivy-covered window. Howard and Kit were arguing, their voices cutting through the stillness like a serrated blade. Kit started spilling her guts, laying out truths that could damn her if Howard wasn't so distracted by his own mess. Then her voice chimed in. Penny herself. Howard, we'll give you the money if you don't want to come with us. It is Stu's. We'd give it to him if he was alive. The irony was thick in the air, like the smell of old garbage wafting from the dumpster next to me. Penny's voice floated out of the window, muffled but unmistakable. Above them, on the balcony, 2 girls with what I can only describe as a couch monstrosity for patio decor were arguing over placement. This city was a caricature of itself. My attention snapped back to the alley when I heard the unmistakable shuffle of someone dragging their feet. Stu fucking Novak. Alive and limping, holding his stomach like he'd just come out of a knife fight, which, technically, he had. Stu Novak, I said, in a low voice, stepping into the dim light of the alley. He stopped, squinting at me like I was a ghost. Who the fuck are you? Bigsby Anderson, private investigator out of Portland, Maine. Been tailing your brother. DPD hired me to keep an eye on him and see if I could figure out your stabbing while I was at it. Stu let out a laugh that sounded more like a wheeze. Yeah? Did you find out about Kit? You bet I did. She's in there now. Stu gritted his teeth, a flicker of anger flashing across his pale face. She tried to kill me, took my money. Let's go. Kick down that fucking door. I didn't need convincing. We walked toward Howard's back door, conveniently located right under the balcony with the tacky couch. Bet it was a joy living under that circus act. I gave the door a solid kick, and it splintered open. The kitchen was dark, the only sound the faint hum of the refrigerator. We moved down the hallway, my hand on my gun. Howard, Stu's alive, buddy. A shadow emerged at the end of the hallway. Howard, wild-eyed and shaky, raised his gun. Don't fucking say that shit. He fired a shot, and I hit the floor, cursing under my breath. Stu, want to help me out here? Howard, it's Stu, Stu exclaimed. There was a pause, then a crash, as Howard dropped his gun. He stepped into the light, disbelief etched on his face. Stu staggered forward, and they embraced like long-lost brothers. All right. What the fuck is going on here? I barked, dragging myself off the floor. Howard looked at me, then at Stu, then back at me. Come in and sit. The living room was dimly lit, cluttered with the kind of soot only Howard could pull off. Kit and Penny were sitting on the couch, looking like kids caught raiding the cookie jar. Fucking Kit Pooley, I muttered, rolling my eyes. Still, who the fuck are you? Kit snapped back. Bigsby, Howard cut in. How do you know Kit, Bigsby? Well, while I was doing real detective work, Howard, I found out Kit's tied to Packnow through Penny. Penny used info stolen from her dad, the chief, by the way, to get the 16 million Leonard left to his true firstborn son, which, surprise, is Stu. Hey, Penny, Stu said casually, as if he weren't fresh out of a hospital bed. Hey, Stu, Penny replied with a smile, like they were old friends meeting for coffee. Howard exploded. And how the fuck do you two know each other? Jesus fuck shit. Penny works at Perry's on Ferry, Stu said, deadpan. Well, I did follow you, Stu, Penny chimed in. And by the way, sorry about making the plot to stab you and stuff. That was super not cool. I'm not sure I even want to go through with my plan. Howard gave me a joint, though. It's really good shit. The kind of shit that makes you change your whole outlook on life. So let's just not dwell on it, okay? I feel dumb. Is that dumb? It's the angel dust and a little cocaine in the joint, Howard interjected. Everyone's faces were stuck on Howard. What? It's my own concoction, I like it. Howard defended himself. Okay, no more input from Penny. Thanks, but no thanks, I said, trying to regain control of the spiraling conversation. Stu, you're fine? You got stabbed? Yeah, pretty much. But hey, 16 million, baby, Stu said, with a shrug. And Howard, any thoughts? I asked. Howard leaned back, his face serious. This money was going to be used to buy a controlling stake of Packnow. We need to think about what we can do with this money. Don't we want to escape the corporate chokehold? What the fuck are you saying, Howard? I demanded. I'm saying we join the Exodus, Howard replied. Stu lit a cigarette, leaning into the idea. You know how far 16 million will get us in Packnow? The girls started in, pitching the benefits of joining the movement. Howard and Stu nodded along, their enthusiasm growing with each sentence Kit and Penny threw out. It had to be the drugs. I sat there, dumbfounded, watching the madness unfold. Then Howard drew his gun. The flash of the .45 was the last thing I saw before I hit the floor. The pain was sharp, hot, and then numb. I could hear their footsteps, Howard, Stu, Penny, and Kit, scrambling out the door, laughing like kids who'd just pulled off the heist of the century. The tacky couch girls upstairs were screaming, their little dog yapping. Funny, I thought. Didn't think this place allowed dogs. Chapter 9. Chief Lane, August 17th, 71. 7:22 a.m. I approached Penny's answering machine. I pressed play. The tape clicked. A man's voice filled the small apartment. "Penny, it's Ron. Jesus Christ, what the hell happened? You were supposed to keep this clean. It is only a matter of time before they find out I was the one leaking the information to you about Stu being Leonard's firstborn. Your father is the chief of police, God damn it. How fucked are we? Answer the phone." A pause. The message ended with the soft, mechanical click. I rewound the tape. "Bag the tape. Find Ron Tanther. This is done. We're putting Packnow in a coffin." I stood in the doorway of my murderous daughter's apartment. CSI techs moved quietly behind me, snapping photos, dusting glass, collecting any shred of evidence. I stared at the answering machine and lit a cigarette, hands steady. "Jesus, Penny," I said to myself, "where the hell did I go wrong?"